stream.
Come on, Burnley.
Come on, Burnley. That was the first
Oh, if
thing our chat heard. Come on, Burnley.
Burnley would be top of the Premier League if they win this game, and that's all that matters.
Yeah, they'll be top of the Premier League for a day. Anyway, hey chat. How you doing? We're here to talk about football. We swindled you. It's not actually about anything related to the strikes. We're just gonna narrate the Man City Burnley game. No, we're actually gonna talk about the strikes. But anyway, hey chat. Um,
We, we might do a football stream one day. We'll see.
we probably should, to be honest.
Without
Yeah,
me and Zod, I assume.
we'll
Yeah, it'll
bring
probably
edits on.
be Column and Jeb and me.
Maybe Strike if Strike is up for it.
Oh yeah, he does like football. Sporting fan.
Yeah.
But anyway, yeah. Um, Meme's late. Before anyone asks, he's probably asleep. It's like 5 a.m. his time. Uh, I'm okay with him being late. I told him that, even being an hour late or something is chill. So yeah, don't worry about it. But anyway, recommendation corner. That's the thing. Yeah, It's been ages since we streamed, so trying to remember what we actually do. But yeah, recommendation corner 10. You're on the left. Recommend your corner.
Well, the main thing that I've watched the past couple of weeks is Good Omens, both season 1 and season 2, which I know you've just started season 2, so I'll keep it spoiler free. But for those who don't know, season 1 is based on the book by Terry Pratchett and Neil Gaiman, who's no stranger to our channel, technically. I just remember, because earlier today I was just remembering, oh yeah, Neil Gaiman is technically part of our lore. Because
Yeah.
Yeah.
If you guys don't
he
know,
had
chat, Twitter Barry, the one and only, Madvocate's sworn rival, he was quote tweeted by Neil Gaiman once. It was the best day ever.
Yeah, like I just remember that, but like, yeah, like, yeah, the book by them too. But the first series is a lot more of a Terry Pratchett side of things because he passed away in 2015, and the first series is a love letter to him by Neil Gaiman because it was like a last request, that sort of thing. And well, the first series is both me and Sky really love it. Like it's even though it's a
really
lot more
fun.
Terry Pratchett, it's really hard to really describe. It's because like the fandom is very much so mixes of Doctor
Well,
Who
that's a
and all
good
that stuff.
start.
Don't interrupt
I,
it. I said it in chat as not to interrupt her. God damn it, Jeb.
okay, but I guess there's some. I guess to give you sort of a pitch of the first series is that, well, heaven and hell are basically trying to start the apocalypse, but the representative demon on Earth ends up getting the babies into the wrong place, so the apocalypse kind of starts to go wrong a bit, and that's sort of the general premise is that the world is going to shit, and somehow that's not the worst bit.
It's also a very gay show.
Yeah, I should warn you, like it's not like very. I wouldn't say explicitly queer, but like just watch the final scene, and it is the gayest shit you will ever see. Like like Michael Sheen is somehow the gayest fucking thing I've ever seen.
He is.
Yeah, man. Yeah, and also because and also David Tennant is just amazing. Like honestly, like I could watch him all day, especially in season 2. Like he is just perfect in this show. And it and what else? Well, yeah, season 1's like very much its own little. I wouldn't say self-contained. Like it very much has its own beginning, middle, and end sort of thing. Is what I'll say. Whereas season 2 is it's a lot more character driven. It's nowhere near as plot driven as season 1. Like it's a lot more slice of life ish. Like
Yeah, I remember Neil Gaiman saying that season 2
Yeah,
would
like
be basically just like a romance. So it's just like the characters, and then shit would actually start happening only in season 3.
because well, before Terry Pratchett died, they did propose a sequel, like plan out a sequel called 668, The Neighbor of the Beast, which is hilarious. And according to Neil Gaiman, that's what season 3 is going to be. So he needed, I mean, it's in the nicest possible way, but he kind of needed like a filler season to just get to that point. And it does make it makes the most of it. Like it's a filler season in a very good way. Like it leaves a lot of great character moments.
I don't think you should call it filler. I think a
Like
bridge season is probably a
yeah,
better.
Bridge season is much more accurate. Yeah, Bridge season, like that's more accurate. But like, probably my favorite part is well, not to give a lot of it away, but like in season 1, there's like an entire cold open dedicated to just Aziraphale and Crow's relationship across the 6,000 years that they've been together. And in season 2, we get a lot more of that, like entire mini shows just dedicated to big events in their life. My favorite being in episode 3 of season 2 when they're in Edinburgh and it's all about body snatching and that. And there's a bit where Crowley gets off his face on laudanum, and it is the funniest thing I have ever seen. Like it is so funny.
My favorite episode season 1 was the one that has the 6,000 years of their friendship.
Yeah, like you'll get a lot more of that, and I assure you, it's really, really good. And if you've been paying attention to like, I guess like the fans and that who have seen it, the ending is again no spoilers, but all I'll say is Neil Gaiman, you utter bastard. It gives you what you want, but he stabs you in the heart for it. But yeah, that's my recommendation. Good Omens season 1 and Good Omens season 2. And I would say we'll eventually do a stream, but knowing Jeb and Zod, we'll never get there.
Yeah.
It's on the list.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Remember when he
yeah,
told you to watch Sandman and you had like 2 months
yeah,
and you didn't watch a single episode? That was fun.
yeah, the show that came out a year ago.
Yeah.
I have more intrigue about Good Omens because Terry Pratchett, if that helps, and Neil Gaiman. I know Neil Gaiman did Sandman, but Terry Pratchett.
Sure, Jeb. Um. Anyway, yeah, Jeb, recommend something.
I would recommend Getting Hit by a Car.
Yeah.
Yesterday, I was going to pick up my medication, funnily enough for blood thinners. And there's like this main road with a roundabout, and I was crossing, and this Vauxhall car just comes round the corner. Not very safe. I think there should be lights, but anyway. And it just knocks me onto the ground, and I'm like, I'm on blood thinners. I'm gonna bruise or bleed. This isn't good. So yeah, since then I've got bruises up my arm. My head's pounding. I don't need hospital. I'm not that bad. I'm alive. But yeah, I'd recommend Getting Hit by a Car. It was a fun experience. There was rain as well, so I felt that was a good omen, one would say.
Ah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
getting hit by a car.
Yes.
Jokes aside, I didn't get hit by a car. It's
Yeah,
okay.
Jeb said he was sick. And I was like, what? Like, he said he felt bad. I was like, what? Did you get hit by a car? And he said no. And then I asked him to tell the chat that he was hit by a car. So you're welcome for that. That was my idea.
It would be funny if I did get hit by a car. I'm not gonna lie. I
Hilarious.
almost did once. It'd just be funny. I'm like, yeah, I'm too stupid to walk. I was gonna say the R word, and now I realised, no, bad word.
Yeah, that gets us demonetized.
The only thing I've really been doing aside from football, and I'm not gonna recommend football, is I guess Super Mario Odyssey.
Rick and Morty.
Actually, you know what? I recommend Rick and Morty. Why not? I'm on season 3, like midway through, I think. Yeah. I used to always struggle to get into Rick and Morty. With season 1, I'd watch like 2 episodes and I'm like, I forgot about it. But Kara's been putting it on whilst I'm there, which is the trick to get me to watch shows. just put it on whilst I'm there and I'm watching it. Seems to be. And I don't know why it's took me so long to get around to this show. I'm really enjoying it. A lot of the comedic writing is very strong. It's not like usual American over the top shit. It's played for quite in a dry sense, and there's a lot of subtext between each joke. Especially when it involves obviously Rick, who's a very interesting character.
Yes. That's what we call Dan Harmon.
Yes. I found season 1 the weakest so far. Not to say it's bad. I did enjoy it, but
yeah, it gets better as it goes on until it peaks in season 3.
yeah, season 2, mainly the back half especially. That's what. Okay, not 2 now. The back half especially, it really picks itself up, and I feel gets into its stride. Season 3 has been excellent each episode. Pickle Rick, obviously iconic for Pickle Rick, but I think it shows a lot about Rick's character as well and his ingenuity, but also about his eternal struggles along with the family. And it deviates from being a Saturday morning cartoon to actually having engaging storylines and character threads. And there's clear setups and payoffs, which makes me more invested.
Yeah.
So yeah, I'd recommend Rick and Morty. Justin Roiland, by the way, piece of shit. Glad Ryland. You know what? I don't respect him enough to pronounce the name right.
Fair enough.
Piece of shit. Glad he's going. I'm glad that he's gone, even in a creative sense, because apparently he was a terrible in a creative sense. So
yeah, in
glad
terms
he's gone.
of writing, even though he created the show and was supposed to be one of the 2 showrunners, along with Dan Harmon, he did not involve himself in the writing nearly as much, especially because his work ethic was awful, which is something the show actually makes fun of. I don't know if you got to that episode. No, you did. Morty's Mind Blowers is the one where
Yes, yeah.
they say that's why you never get anything done, and you're always. Summer says that too. You're always late or whatever. So yeah.
My favorite scene so far, because it's just because of how it's delivered, is the at the beginning of every season they have that Rick's monologue,
Yeah.
and it's season 3 episodes 1 monologue. The way he just drags Morty back just to become more incoherent, it killed me.
That was the one where he says it's gonna be the darkest years of our adventures.
Yeah,
Right?
yeah, I couldn't stop laughing.
Yeah, that was great.
And he goes on about the nugget sauce, 9 seasons.
Yeah, the fucking Szechuan sauce. It's great.
But yeah, I recommend Rick and Morty. Very good show.
Yeah, the one thing that I will miss from Justin Roiland is that he was amazing at improv, which is part of what made the what's it called? Interdimensional cable episode so interesting because they improved all of that and they just animated after the fact. So that was really, yeah, he was really fucking funny in those. My favorite jokes is still the Anti-My Eyes Johnson and the personal space guy. They're both the funniest of the interdimensional cable episodes for me.
The squirrel joke as well killed me.
The squirrel from the Morty's Mind Blowers, or the one where the squirrels live inside people's butts?
The Morty Mind Blowers,
okay.
where they all chase and then they have to leave the dimension.
Yeah, no, that was great too. Yeah, but yeah. Anyway,
go on. Oh.
It's my I was watching that play as well. Anyway, it's my turn to recommend something. I watched a lot of stuff actually. I don't know which I want to recommend. I guess Asteroid City, because I did watch, Oppenheimer, and I watched Barbie, and I watched Mission Impossible: Dead Reckoning, but I feel like Asteroid City is the most interesting one, the least amount of people will have seen. And there's a good chance to actually talk about Oppenheimer and Barbie at some point. So anyway, Asteroid City, the newest Wes Anderson film, it is really fucking interesting if you actually like understand what he's saying, it's a hard film to understand as a whole because it is like entirely metaphorical for his own life by using the setting of like 1950s city that's like right next to a nuclear test site, and he uses all its elements perfectly, all the actors, and it's just like one thing that annoys me is when people say that Wes Anderson, his films aren't really like emotionally driven or character driven, because he's really about a lot about the style and telling an interesting story. And this film, he kind of acknowledges that in a way to make to like talk about the artifice of his work of just writing in general, and it's really really interesting. I love Asteroid City. So yeah, that's my recommendation. Also, it has Bryan Cranston in it. So yeah, that's cool. Anyway, Zod, you recommend something?
Uh, um, I've not watched too much. I did watch Ghost in the Shell the other week, or however much time has passed. But I think what I'll go with is Supernatural because I've been watching that.
Hey,
I finished season 5 today actually. It's not my first time seeing them, but this is one of those shows I've sort of like fucking 400 times when I was whatever age I was. Uh, but trying to figure out how to begin. Yeah, I think it's pretty obvious that just at the crux of the show is so the two brothers and their relationship with each other, and I think, but just for the first 5 seasons at least that I've seen, is that's all been done. It's all done really quite well. But the character work that's done for them too, especially, is just the absolute highlight. So there is stuff that doesn't exactly work great in terms of writing sometimes, but just through it all, them two, that make it worth watching, mainly because of the chemistry between the two of them as actors, and also just because they just have some really interesting and it's quite well thought out character development going on. It's one of those shows where like, there's sort of like it's sort of different things going on with each episode, like, but they're not standalone episodes. You know what I mean? Like, but most of the time the episodes that there is a point to them that ties into the overall point of the season, I guess, or the overall plot line or whatever.
yeah, it's
And
very much a villain of the week episode in a sense, but for like most of it, but it always ties in at least with the character development of the season. So every episode's worthwhile.
yeah, I think some do it better than others, but
Yeah.
when they do it well, they do it really well. So that's actually really well thought out.
Mm-hmm.
Not something I expected to say about anything in this show from when I first started rewatching it. It was like, because I went into it basically with just the mindset of like, I can imagine this is going to be great. So I'll just like enjoy it for what it is because nostalgia. And I think I'm not entirely sure which I'd say the best season so far is.
What seasons have you rewatched?
I've done 5.
5 is the best.
I think so. Yeah. I'm not entirely sure. I like all of them for very different reasons.
Mm-hmm.
Season 1 used to be my least favorite from pretty much like when I was younger, and I think it still is now. But that's only because the other ones are like great. I'd say.
One thing I really like about season 1 is, it has a lot of John Winchester, and I love Jeffrey Dean Morgan, and obviously, season 2 onwards doesn't have him for some weird reason. I don't know why. So yeah, I really like him in that.
Yeah, he does great for the time that he's in it.
Mm-hmm.
they do really well. Like, really interesting stuff in terms of villains as well. Like yeah, the classic one is the yellow-eyed demon, which
Yeah.
is like he's from what I know, he's very popular within like the fandom and all that, and
Yeah.
you can see why he's very effectively done. Even when he's not in the show as much, he carries quite a major sort of presence. I guess that just sort of infects everything. And
Yeah.
I think the thing that impresses me most as well is like later seasons, like they'll often have these reveals that will sort of recontextualize elements of the brothers and their lives and it's like motivations of particular characters, like what's sort of supposed to be building towards, I guess.
Mm.
And they do that. It does feel sort of well thought out for the most part. It's like yeah, you can see how like how that works. It's like I don't know. It's sort of it makes the confrontation at the end, I guess, feel sort of built up. So yeah, it does feel very much like this is 5 seasons worth of build up, and
Yeah. Well, the
yeah,
first, I mean, the show was planned to end in season 3. But Eric Kripke had an idea until season 5. So after season 3, they asked him to do 2 more seasons, and then he left as a showrunner. So the first 5 seasons are very much more of a cohesive like story, where you can tell where it was going from season 1 to season 5, and after that, the seasons kind of feel more standalone. Not entirely like a season leads into the other, but it's like in a less cohesive way.
yeah, I can see what you mean. It makes me interested to see what goes on in like season 6 and that because I can't remember how many I did when I was younger. I think it might have even gone past season 10. I can't fully remember. But
Do you remember who the latest villain was? The last one you remember?
I think I remember the Leviathans.
That was 7.
Yeah, and I did go beyond that. I remember Metatron. Actually,
Metatron was in 8 and 9.
yeah, so it must have been somewhere around there. I
Mm.
stopped. I can't remember why I stopped it. Just one of those things just fell off. I guess.
It is a really
But
long show, so again, not being able to to continue watching it forever. I did. I watched this show a few times actually. I'm on my 3rd watch of it because I've been watching it with my mom for the past like 2 years. It does take us a lot of time because it is 15 seasons, but I really do love it.
yeah, it's I think from what I remember of the later seasons, there's definitely stuff to like. Like again, just that
Oh yeah,
natural chemistry.
I think people over exaggerate the drop off because the show definitely gets worse after season 5, but I don't think it ever gets bad. Not to say that there aren't bad episodes. There are bad episodes in every season, but the show is still like overall good, and the characters, which are the main focus, still remain mostly pretty solid.
Yeah, and if nothing else, there's just like the natural chemistry between the actors, or
Yeah,
even just beyond the two brothers, just not just the side cast as well. They're all. It's just clear that everyone gets along really well. It carries
yeah,
through to the screen, and just makes for a really enjoyable watching experience.
yeah.
But yeah, I'm going to be interested to see what the remaining seasons do, and then I can look forward to the finale.
Yeah, I'm not watching the finale with my mom. I'm literally just gonna like say, yeah, it ends on episode 19. How odd. Don't check HBO Max. There's no episode 20. Yeah, fuck that episode. Fucking hell. But anyway, that's it. We've done it. We did it. We got through recommending things. And I approve of every recommendation because I've seen all of them except for season 2 of Good Omens. But we can now start talking about the strikes in Hollywood. How exciting. Is this as I heads up? Okay, Jeff. He doesn't know how to write. He's telling me he's eating chicken, so he might be silent for a sec.
Yeah, Kara made dinner.
Yeah. Um, but anyway, all right. The strikes. I don't know exactly where to start. I guess.
I think
Okay,
I
you.
think we should outline our individual positions on them, probably.
Sure.
Um, we'll start with 10. 10. I'd like you to outline your position,
Oh Christ.
Good luck.
and then Rod, and then Sky, and then me. Gives me time to eat my chicken wrap.
Yeah.
Well, I'll be fine. So.
Yeah, sure. Okay, so where do you start? Uh, I guess like start
Start with whether you support them or not. That's probably the
well,
best based on them.
I think that goes without saying that we all support them. Like it's absolutely 100% necessary
I mean,
for all this, especially with the climate that we've seen.
I agree,
In
but it's
without
not
this.
inherently a fact considering. Uh, well, a lot of people think the strikes are stupid. We'll get to that being a stupid thing against it.
Well, well, the thing is that I guess like something I noticed like before is that like it was mainly in relation to how VFX workers were being treated and how like well they're also starting a union now, but like that sort of thing has sort of been I guess pointing towards that we are going to like another major writers' strike era like we had 15-ish years ago back when the last one happened.
Yeah.
And
2007, 2008. Yeah.
no, yeah, and for one, everything after everything that I've heard, like how like writers are getting barely any residuals. How like I saw a story how a writer got a residual for $0. Like at that point, and how like in this new age of like streaming now, how it's really started to fuck over how residuals work and how getting paid for fair writing works. It it's just a necessary time to do it now, especially since every streaming service under the sun wants their new great big TV show, and there's and it's starting to show that it's just not feasible, and it needs a really major shift. And especially since the people running said streaming services are shown to be incredibly out of touch. Looking at you, Bob Iger.
Wow. Wait, you're telling me a billionaire owner of the biggest company in the world doesn't is out of touch? That's insane. I would never know.
Not exactly breaking news, but
Yeah.
it's just the fact that studios have been so over the toply just evil about it. Like the whole thing of them saying, "Oh, we want it to last until
Until they can't
they run
afford to
out."
survive
Yeah.
anymore, and then they'll
Like,
have to give in.
it's like there's
Wow.
a pause and the strikes, and then there's just being a straight up villain. Like, how can you look at yourself and not think you're the bad guy? But it's also the same for the actors' strikes. Like, everyone keeps pointing out that like it's always the big actors, but like most actors aren't that big. Like, that's only like maybe like a handful of how many actors are working nowadays, and most of them are working day to day, barely able to afford anything. So of course they need to strike for fair wages. It's how most strikes work.
Yeah, I mean, it's something that I find interesting, what you're saying, that people are like, man, actors don't deserve to be paid better. They're already paid so well. But like one of their favorite shows is Friends, and like Joey for a lot of the show just doesn't have a job, or the one he has is, just this one soap opera job that, is good to keep him paid and fed, but it's not something that makes him like rich or something. It's the start of a soap opera, and he's still, just getting by. And he took like years, like 5 years into the show until he actually got like a big break, which was Days of Our Lives. Like that show was clearly making a point to tell you that not all actors' lives are like um the super glamorous rich life that a lot of people assume that it is, and people will watch that show and just not internalize that that concept. It's really funny.
Yeah, because it's like most actors in that are just superstars in that. Like they're super famous in that, but like that's like that's only like a handful of like actors. Like that's like that's a minority of actors, I guess
Yeah.
you could say, where like the ones who have really made it. But like it, even for them, whenever they talk about their story, their rise to fame, and that it's always, oh, I was barely getting roles, I could barely do anything, I was going job to job. It's like, oh, every actor goes through that,
Yeah, and then
and
they
you
get
and,
one
and
big break that helps them out, and then they build a career off that. You know, it's like the thing
so
that people say about like how YouTube, you know, they're like everyone can make it. You just gotta, you know, be talented and everything. No, man, it's a lot of luck. You need to be lucky to be picked by the algorithm. You need to be lucky to make it in Hollywood, unless you're a nepo baby, which most of the famous Hollywood actors are, even if they wouldn't like you to know that. But beside the point.
yeah, precisely. It's a very necessary time to strike. It's my main sort of point. It's obviously I support them, and with everything that's come out about them, as I'd say, go on till Disney burns to the ground. That's my
I would be very
that's
happy
my
if Disney burned to the ground, to be honest. But
yeah. Yeah. That's my main sort of thoughts. Like, yeah, fully in support.
yeah. Zod.
Right. I think out of all of us here, I'm probably the most understanding towards the ones who are sort of against it. Not to say that I am against it, but like I can see why people are, and that's because of sort of a trend of misinformation, I guess. Uh, sort of a general lack of understanding about what the situation truly is, because there's very much a sort of that sort of narrative that, like, once actors, if you're involved with like a big production, you're guaranteed to get paid really well, and you're basically set for life, whatever. And I think it is just one of those narratives that's just sort of spread, sort of kind of intentionally, and partly also because it's partly based off what TV shows used to be, like back before the days of streaming, where like before any of like Netflix or any of that existed, like, things were a bit better back then. But like streaming has come along, and residuals have become more and more of a debated issue, and it's just turned into more and more of a thing where actors and writers, especially like ones that just haven't made it anywhere. Like, yeah, sure, Tom Cruise is getting like fucking like 200 million per film or whatever he's getting, and then there's background actor number 259 who's getting jack shit. And
Yeah.
and you just sort of see these articles that come up a lot. Like a Discussing Film has done quite well with bringing out particular stories that come up. But the ones I've been seeing lately is from the show Suits, which I haven't seen, but apparently it gets like, it's fucking insane in terms of how many people watch that show. It's very extremely popular around the world, and there've been actors who've said that in terms of residuals, they've gotten like a couple of $100 at most. It's like it's insane that we're in this era of streaming where just media, TV shows and movies are pretty much more accessible than they've ever been. More and more people are just watching them like casually. Just pretty much everything's constantly being watched, and the actors and the people behind them, who are making them, just aren't getting the financial recognition they deserve for it, really, because it's just going towards executives, which is like you'll see. I think the main one was that Bob Iger bought a fucking $20 million yacht or something.
Yeah.
Whilst all these people are struggling. It really is insane to hear about.
Well, yeah,
And-
it's we will talk in detail about it, but it is insane how like you can see how wages over time, over the past decades, decade or two, have decreased for every one of the workers, but not, but the CEOs are getting paid way more. They're getting way more money than before. Like, just, I think it's like the biggest gap in terms of like the how much money the CEO makes compared to like their lowest paid worker like ever. I think I remember. I think it was Sean Gunn making the video where he talked about that and shat on Bob Iger, which, you go, Sean Gunn. You're awesome.
Yeah, and I think the main, one of the bigger points of disagreement that comes up as well is just the idea that these actors and writers just simply don't deserve to be paid more because they're just not putting in, they're just not bringing out as great quality products.
Mhm.
And it's like, I mean, it's easy to be cynical, I guess, because of like things like movie quality has just sort of gone down to an extent in recent times. Like, if you look at like the bigger budget stuff, especially, it's like in terms of the quality that's being put out is just actually embarrassing compared to like the money that's being put into them, and just where we are in history, I guess. But I think what people just don't tend to consider in that aspect is a similar thing with the VFX workers, where it's just like the lack of payment combined with some really sort of rushed and like bad working conditions in general. It's just it's not exactly a great breeding ground for creativity and stuff like that. Naturally, you're going to end up with lower quality products when the people making them just are barely even getting the money they need to survive. So, what do you expect them to do at that point?
Yeah.
Yeah, so essentially, it's just the executives are cheaping out a lot, I guess, in terms of like they're paying people less, they're bringing in, like you see in the MCU especially, bringing in like these writers that just don't have that much experience at all. But just, oh yeah, we can give you a massive multi-million dollar budget film, so we can justify paying you less because you're less experienced. And it's
And then everyone's surprised when the film turns out to not be good.
Yeah, it is necessary to have these strikes, and hopefully it works out well. It seems like things are going all right.
Yeah, Monday the Writers Guild is gonna get back to negotiating.
Yeah,
But one thing that I really appreciate that the WGA said is that even if they get what they want, they're gonna keep striking in solidarity with the actors, with
that's good.
SAG-AFTRA, which is very much a good thing.
Oh, I fucking forgot as well. But another big aspect of it is the AI.
Oh yeah,
Because there have been a lot of stories
Oh.
there as well of
I am interested to hear what Meme's gonna say about that because he has I guess, the most positive view of AI out of everyone here.
yeah. I can't remember where specifically the story's from. I think it was WandaVision actually, where a lot of actors got scanned for.
Oh yeah, the background actors, their faces got scanned to use in future productions, and the actors didn't know that and don't know when it's gonna be used.
And won't be getting paid for it.
Yeah.
It's just insane. It's like your likeness is just being taken without any knowledge of it, and it can just show up anywhere at any time to do something that you might not even necessarily entirely agree with doing.
Yeah.
If it was like physically you, and you won't even get paid for it. So it does feel like the cameos in the Flash will. If that AI stuff goes through, then the cameos in the Flash are just sort of the beginning. It's like it only gets worse from there. Yeah, that's and money's important as well, but like obviously, but that sort of AI stuff is going to be quite damaging to the art form itself.
Yeah.
It does take away a lot from the human aspect of it, I guess.
Yeah, it just
Not
takes
to say
the
that
soul away, I think.
Yeah, it's just not to say that AI can't be used in really effective ways to like make films improve the process a bit, I guess. But it's just something you've got to be careful with, and most importantly, get the consent of the people. Like, if you're going to use it for like recreating particular people, get the consent and pay them properly for it.
Yeah.
Pretty
Yeah,
much
like
just
you're
that
still
simple.
using, someone's likeness in some way, whether it be their voice, their face, or whatever. Like I saw when I was preparing the tweet today, I saw someone post a clip of like a video game they used an AI voice. I think it was JXE that
Oh
had
yeah,
quote tweeted, and the game they used an AI voice, and it was like, oh, is that the voice from X person from like the Final Fantasy 7 and whatever other game? And I was like, well, because it really sounds like her, and I really don't think she was asked about it. Like, man, imagine just getting your voice used, and you're not even compensated for it, and you don't even know that that's happening. It's insane, honestly.
and also there's just something that comes up in chat that I want to sort of
Oh yeah,
mention.
I wanted to read the
But
Yeah,
chats. If
so did I.
Yeah, okay, I'll read it then. I think the writers will probably get more money, but that just means less jobs moving forward. Simple as that. That is probably what's gonna happen. That is also
I
an issue. That
I don't think that's
anyway. But well, I think what's gonna end up happening is that streaming is gonna die soon because of all this. But you know,
I I think what's going to happen. I don't think they're going to inherently get more money. I think the money that's being distributed on sense of the writers, because there's not that many writers anyway in terms of TV shows or films. I think whatever money they're going to save, they're not going to increase the pay of the writers. They're going to invest it all into whoever's doing the AI algorithms, let's say, whoever's doing all that development, because the issue is in the tech industry that's a very specialized skill, and people expect a lot of money for that. Uh, it's no longer just a media industry that you dealing with. You're overlapping into the tech industry, and you have to go by their standards. So I don't think the writer's pay will go up really. I think it's just going to be whoever's doing the AI, whether it be outsourced or internal. Um, just yeah, because the tech industry as a whole.
so you don't think the strike's gonna work?
No, I think the strikes will work. The current strikes will work, but I think long term, if we continue down the reliance of big corporations using AI, we could enter a dystopian situation where AI becomes the dependency. Those people see the most money. Not to say that they shouldn't get money, but the writers will be even more in a worse situation in the long term if we don't do something about the ethical considerations now with the AI stuff.
Well, I mean, big part of this AI stuff is that the companies wouldn't be allowed to use them. Maybe not for actors. It's just scanning and everything, so we might be able to use for that. In terms of writing, the writers want to keep AI completely out of the writers' room. So I don't know if the AI reliance is gonna happen if they get their demands, because the entire point is that they wouldn't allow that, and if the union and the negotiations all keep their keep their word, I don't think there's a way to get around that. But that's the thing, the companies would need to agree to those what's the word, the promises,
Uh,
the negotiations, whatever
the terms of, I
terms,
guess.
that's the word, thanks.
Um, I think the main issue is it's really early days with AI, especially in terms of writing. Even on a cybersecurity level, AI is very early in how it's doing it, where hackers can use it just to do their attacks. So it's hard to say what's going to happen now and how it impacted 20 years. The AI chat GPT stuff could just be a fad. In fact, I'd be confident to say that it is going to be a fad because in a media sense it lacks that authenticity and that human element that you can't ever replicate if you're doing AI. So it 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 really depends. So I don't know. The thing is, I don't think we could also go AI won't really write that oversight. I think if you're a corporation and you're like, okay, we'll just get this AI script to produce this out, you might have a script editor there for a tiny bit of oversight. But if it's standard enough to make money, they're not going to give a shit.
Yeah,
I mean,
the system is built to keep these companies as rich as they are.
yeah,
So they control this. Like, if there are regulations, it won't matter. I mean, Disney has been for decades controlling how laws around copyright remains for people who've died. Like they wanted to keep Mickey Mouse and everything else like under their ownership, and so laws have been extending that for decades and decades of like how long after you die do the rights revert to being public domain. And it's just they made it longer and longer and longer. Like, Disney controls that, and these big corporations control the world. Like, they make way too much money to be able to like actually be stopped.
yeah, and it's interesting to me because to me this was always an obvious thing to emerge. How little, not the strikers themselves, but how little audiences really prepared for such an inevitability, and for this to become a problem. It kind of got brushed under the rug. I guess that's because corporations again trying to hide the practices, but it's really strange because they've been satirizing this for years and upon years
Yeah.
now.
And it's the kind of thing that we were all aware of, but we still didn't take seriously. And it's the kind of thing that really annoys me, because like we are all aware of this, and we all say like, oh, Kevin Feige wanting to make so many films in a year, and not being able to control these stories, and just like like I always say in my Ant-Man videos, that the Ant-Man films aren't like made by Peyton Reed or written by whatever the fucking 5 writers were for both films. They're Kevin Feige films that Peyton Reed is just there to be like to do everything he wants. But people will say that, but then they're like, oh, the writers are the problem. But like you just said, it's not the writers that are the issue. So like you can't have both.
Yeah, I hate as well the narrative that She-Hulk's a good one. Where they got the residual checker so low, and so people were going, it should be low, and I'm like, well, I don't think quality determines your worth in the media industry. I think that's a naive outlook,
Yeah,
because the reality is
it's popularity.
quality.
That's what you should be concerned about.
Yeah, like we've had this statement for years with Transformers, and then we just throw it out the window when it comes to writers wanting what they actually brought revenue in for.
Yeah.
It's absolute bonkers to me. You'll think AI would have written Ant-Man better. No, God no.
I
Again,
don't know, maybe. If you mean Quantumania or Ant-Man and the Wasp, the first Ant-Man, no. But it probably would have been funnier. I love videos about like, oh, I asked an AI to write a script based on whatever, and it's hilarious because it's just the AI understands like maybe the cliches or a bit of dialogue, but it doesn't understand how to connect those things in a way that actually makes sense. Yet, obviously, it probably will at some point. Not in a way that would actually be like good or replaceable for actual writers, but in a way that doesn't feel like you're talking to like a monkey in a typewriter.
Yeah, and just to sort of go back a bit, the other thing in chat I wanted to sort of say is it's unfortunate that their faces got scanned, but the reality is if a studio can pull it off, audiences won't notice and likely not care. And I think a couple of years ago that might have been more true, because like when you look at like Luke Skywalker in the Mandalorian finale, for example,
People
so
love that.
a lot of people lost their minds over that. Yeah, that whole thing was just it was all the praise, just everyone loved it. And I think this year has shown, with the Flash especially, has been sort of a breaking point where those sorts of soulless recreations of just people for the sake of like hyped up cameos. But people are getting sick of that. It's
Yeah.
just
I also
it's
think
not
it's the
as
kind of
profitable anymore.
thing where like people have been more aware of the dangers of AI. Like you can see the amount of films recently that have had like AI as a villain, you know, and the amount of like dystopian stories like how AI, robots, everything replacing workers. It's the kind of thing that has grown a lot. It has been a thing for decades, but I think it's grown a lot over the past few years. Like that Mission Impossible, that Reckoning, the villain is an AI. So it is kind of interesting that there is this like thing in the industry, in the media about that, of people just being sick of it.
Yeah, I think like that's sort of the difference between like sort of the studio executives and guests and like the audiences. Like the audiences are quite acutely aware of the sort of dangers that can come from AI at
Yeah.
this point. And
I-
again, it's just like being sick of like these sort of soulless things. But then there's the studio executives that only see like the potential for profit in it. It's like, well, we can use AI to do this and that, do it quicker, do like throw in some cameos here and there of this and that person. Like, we can get some box office money for that. And it's like, yeah, boring.
No, it's
I
the kind of
don't.
thing where like for years as well, we've kind of been like, we don't like how people are using, VFX and CGI to replace, just, sets and, um, characters and everything, because it gets to a point where it's like it doesn't even feel real. When you watch Quantumania, you're like, this doesn't feel like a film. They're just standing in front of a green screen talking to an actor who isn't there, you know. And I feel like it's kind of the same principle of people just being like it kind of lost its soul, and people really appreciate when like there's practical effects and everything over um CGI. Even if the CGI is good, they just prefer it because they think like principally that it's gonna have a lot more soul into it. Because a lot of especially because of the way that VFX workers are treated, that if a practical effect looks good, there was a lot of work put into that, and that they were being like overworked to a point where it just turned out to be shit. Because with the CGI, we just see it and we're like, yeah, this is shit because they overworked these workers, because they underpaid them, and it just kind of like gets to a point where you're like sick of it, sick of seeing all these CGI heavy films, even if they are good CGI. And I think it's the same with AI. Like, yeah, there's like the Luke Skywalker thing that people liked, but it gets more and more. You're like, okay, like people are already sick of Luke Skywalker in Book of Boba Fett. We're like, okay, we don't like this anymore. It was just the high of being like, yeah, cool cameo from the film I liked when I was a kid. It's like completely different.
I think it's. I don't know if I entirely agree with that. I think it's entirely contextual. So take I think Star Wars is a very good example. Luke, for example, with his initial appearance on the back of TLJ, and he's doing quote unquote Luke things, as the audience said. Um, I think they became disenchanted with Book of Boba Fett, not because Luke was there, but because it's a Boba Fett show, and we're suddenly having a Mandalorian segue, and we're dealing with things not related to Boba Fett.
Well,
And then
but I don't think that's entirely it, because I think the issue is like Boba Fett is the biggest encapsulation by that point. Now, Mando season 3 is kind of that too, but like of the soullessness that Star Wars had become. You know what I mean? Like, to a point where you watch Boba Fett and you're like, this isn't a Boba Fett show. He's not barely doing anything. This isn't a story. It's just showing things. And like there's fucking Cad Bane and everything. Like it's just cameos, just things that you like being thrown at the screen, but there's nothing actually happening. I think it was the biggest case of just like, boy, things sure are happening, but nothing about it actually feels real. And Luke was an example of that, because of, like, that scene with Baby Yoda and Luke talking, and it's just like, this is a puppet talking to an AI generated voice and actor that don't sound good or look good, and that it just creates a big disconnect. Because at least in Mando season 2, even though it was bad, there is some kind of emotional significance to the story of what Luke is doing. In Book of Boba Fett, it just kind of feels like, part of what you're saying is true, that it is because Book of Boba Fett had a Mando episode and people are like, what the hell? But it's also because that made people be like, why are we doing this? Oh, you just want us to, to think that, oh, there Luke's here, I'm gonna like this. And it just, I guess, opened people's eyes, but I don't think it's the only reason. That the fact that it was a Mando episode in the middle of a Boba Fett show. I think it's that was just an easy way for people to open their eyes. The same way that Mando season 3 was hated by most viewers, even though the first 2 seasons aren't good either, mostly because it just opened their eyes to how substanceless the show is. Anyway, hey meme.
Oh,
Hey, mate.
hi.
But that's kind of what I mean by contextual. I think if you put it in an environment where there is a purpose to the story and there is a point to it all, and it has also emotional value. Another good example is actually with the CGI of Carrie Fisher, the young Carrie Fisher in Rogue One. I think audiences start turning a blind eye, and the reason corporations are getting caught out currently is because they're not putting in that effort. If they
Right.
start putting in that effort, and I think they're getting wise to that, I think we see a dynamic shift in the audience. With the Flash, I don't like using that as an example because ultimately it was briefly soulless. It's a Flash film, and people are seeing Superman characters, and it becomes even more jarring when you use CGI Christopher Reeves compared to a Superman film which celebrates all the different eras. So I think it's all about, if they don't play it in a soulless manner and make it have emotional value, I do think audience will just forget that, hey, this has potentially unethical practices to it,
Right.
and we need to consider in the lines, sort of thing.
Right. Yeah, it's the kind of thing where I think because people's eyes are more open to it now, we should do something about it now. Because if,
Yeah.
as you said, corporations start getting wise to it and they actually try to put substance behind the use of these things, but that still damages actors and writers' works and livelihoods, then it will become a problem that is just kind of unsolvable. So I understand what you mean.
Like, I'm on the side of using AI. I think any technology can be a very useful tool.
Yeah.
It's just about using it. It's about moderation. Like visual effects and stuff. It's a fairly useful tool, but like Disney with their MCU stuff, the over reliance is what's becoming a problem. I think AI could be especially helpful when you have a tight deadline. You don't want to overwork your employees.
Well, it's the kind of thing that
so we-
people make fun of people, in general, but no, it's people in the film industry. A meme's gonna understand that as well. The way people say oh, we'll fix it in post kind of idea, and especially
Yeah.
as an editor, the fix it in post line is just the worst thing someone can say to you. Oh, we will fix it in post, huh? It won't be me, it will be us. Because it's just oh, we're shooting this scene out, we'll figure it out in post, and then you have to pass it on to those VFX artists who need to get everything done and fulfill your vision when you don't even know what your vision is, because you're a new director working with new technology that you've never really worked with before, because Marvel hired you because you are a new director and it's cheap. So it's just exploiting, basically.
Yeah.
it's
It's especially disheartening because I think fix it in post is fine if you actually know what can and cannot be fixed in post, like if you have that awareness, and especially if you're also the one editing the film, as sometimes happens with indie films. But if you're if you're only directing and you don't really have much VFX experience, and and you don't actually know how much work goes into fixing something in post, or even what tools are and aren't available at the present moment, because you can do a lot. You can fix things in post a lot faster now than you used to be able to. But
Yeah.
because of that, a lot of people think that it's really easy to do anything in post, when really it's just things are getting easier all the time, but still some jobs are harder than others, and there needs to be an awareness of what jobs are and aren't
Yeah.
doable.
Yeah, it's the kind of thing where it's like, especially with Marvel, like where films aren't even written when they start shooting, and then there's a bunch of ADR. Like, it's just a way of like you're not even like your writer isn't even like writing this film anymore, right? You're just going through the motions. You don't even know what the film is. You're halfway through shooting it, you have no idea. Fucking Benedict Cumberbatch saying that he didn't know what Doctor Strange's arc was in Multiverse of Madness. It's like, how is that possible? You know, your main character does the main actor playing the main character in your film just doesn't know what's going on with this character. It's just entirely like the way the especially Disney has been doing it with just like not letting their writers take their time and actually work on their products, getting them out as fast as possible. Where it's become like a, you know, they've made films become products, you know, content instead of like films, and you're just like, you know, getting this production line of like, yeah, let's get this film out, and then this film out, and then this film out. And don't even stop to like analyze if it's good or not, because they don't even have time, you know.
Or even just like just announcing films at like a fast fire rate without considering how much time would actually need to go into it. Which is
You're
like,
thinking about across Beyond the Spider-Verse, aren't you?
no, actually, actually, yes, I do generally think that like announcing that when we know they weren't worked on at the same time, and with them barely having a story and saying there's less than a year away, that's one of the most foolish things I've ever seen.
Yeah.
But actually, I was thinking of them announcing that they're gonna make and they're gonna do 2 Avengers films and both release them in the same year.
Oh yeah.
Like
It was
saying they're gonna do Kang Dynasty and Secret Wars in the same year, which they're gonna change the release date. But the fact that they actually thought they could get away with that to begin with is just so dumb.
Yeah.
it wasn't the same year. 1 year each.
Jab, you're roboting. Hold on, let me change the region. All right, we've changed the region, but yeah, Jab's right. I'm pretty sure it was 1 year
yeah.
within the other, but it's still like
Yeah,
way too
still-
not enough time. And you can tell that by the way Endgame was so bad compared to Infinity War, which I don't even think Infinity War is a good film, but Endgame was like extremely rushed in a lot of aspects. That a lot of people blame that rushing for why that a lot of Endgame had like some issues are like, why didn't they do this? Oh, this would have been obvious. It's because they didn't have time to write or plan it properly.
Well, they were considering turning those 2 films into a trilogy at one point, and
Yeah.
watching Endgame, I'm just like,
You
yeah,
should have done that.
probably should have been.
Yeah.
Yeah.
The film that kind of encapsulates it in an MCU sense to me.
Jab, you're really roboting and cutting out. We can't really understand.
Singapore.
Jab. Jab. I think Singapore killed him. God damn it, me. You murdered him.
That'll be on his gravestone.
Yeah.
You know, it either, you know, it's an all or nothing gambit with Singapore. It either completely heals the connection or it completely destroys it.
Yeah. No, Jab, we cannot hear you. Just leave the call and rejoin. Try doing that. Can he hear us? I don't actually.
I don't think he can hear us. I think
He's just in the void.
Of course you can't hear us. That's basically his gimmick.
His gimmick, yeah. Oh, the gimmick of being born deaf. Hilarious. Jab?
Am I good?
Yeah, now we can
No,
hear
we
you
can
and you're
hear
not
you.
roboting.
I had
Okay,
my
so you're-
VPN on as well.
Oh, wow, that never
come
happens,
on.
Jab. It's not like I've been telling you for 2 years to check if your VPN is on before you start streaming. No.
To be fair to us, it hadn't happened for months. and I've just got a new laptop, so that's why.
Mm.
Well, yeah.
Um,
Point being, yeah.
Yeah,
You're
you
saying.
were
I
making a
think
point.
I think the MCU wise, the film that encapsulates it is Blade. That film still hasn't really got a clear release date, and they
Well,
announced it way ahead of time.
Yeah, and didn't the director drop out of the project, or was it the writer? It was one of the
Yeah,
two. Yeah.
Something like
director.
I
that.
think the director dropped out, and the writer actually they haven't hired him yet. I think that's what's happening.
Well,
And then you got Fantastic Four as well.
Yeah.
Some
Oh
motherfuckers
yeah,
are always trying to
that
skate uphill.
yeah, how they've barely got a cast together for that, and it was announced years ago.
Yeah, it was announced along with the Phase 4 and 5 plans, right?
Yeah, it
Yeah.
was, and now we're just starting to get some rumors on who could actually be cast.
Yeah, I don't know why they would do that. I mean, I
In like,
know that their announcement was just like builds anticipation for things to come, but it's like,
in like I get wanting to take time with it because there's very famously there's been shit history with the Fantastic Four, but you're not helping when you're taking this long and having this much production history with this one film.
mm,
Yep.
I'm gonna see as well whether it's now going to be counted as Phase 6. I think it is.
Yeah, I think they announced that it's going to be
Yeah,
yeah,
Phase
phase six.
6.
When they announced like all the stuff like leading up to Secret Wars and that, they announced that that Fantastic Four is going to be in that sort of lot.
It's going to be the
didn't they actually
beginning of Phase 6.
change the phases stuff though? Because like they ended Phase 4 early.
Yeah, they
Yes,
do.
we're in
It
Phase
was
5 now.
Yeah.
it was supposed to go on for a lot longer, but I think
I think it's just an
the
optics
reaction.
thing because Phase 4 was so poorly received. You're like, now it's Phase 5, completely different. Definitely not the same group of films that before.
Like, how was Blade and Fantastic Four coming out in 2025, but we got Captain America 4, Deadpool 3, and Thunderbolts before that?
And
No,
Jesus
so-
Christ, did they even know who's writing Fantastic Four? Because it was John Watts, right? But then he dropped out because he doesn't want to do more hero stuff.
Jeff
Yeah,
Catalan
that-
and Ian Springer.
Mm.
Uh,
No, I
Don't know
remember.
who they are.
Yeah, I remember reading their credits, and I don't remember being very optimistic about it.
I will say this is the Zod remind this, but
Hello.
that TV show the universe that's just been announced by the guy who created the thick of it, and how it's like been done on how on like it's like a like Succession, but done on creating a superhero cinematic universe could not come at a better time, because it is gonna just
Oh yeah,
because
I sent that in the GC. I thought it was an amazing idea. Who's the writer doing it?
The showrunner is someone who worked on Succession and Veep.
No, there's a name I
So-
recognized.
I know it said Sam.
Oh, Sam
Mendes.
Mendes. That's what I wanted. Yeah, Sam Mendes.
Yeah.
That's the name I was trying to remember. That'll be interesting.
And also I can never get his name right. What's his name again? Zod.
Hamish
It said he's
Patel?
like no, one of the guys like writing it and that
Oh, I don't know.
Armando.
Oh, Armando Iannucci.
Yeah, him.
I don't know how deeply involved he is, but like, not how much writing he's going to be doing or whatever.
Hmm.
But I think the idea for the show came from him and Sam Mendes, and they're going to be producers, and Sam Mendes is going to be directing. So they clearly have a lot of influence over it. And yeah, just Armando Iannucci is just. I've always considered him like just absolute master in terms of like satire and parody, and so the fact that he's like bringing us this sort of show, but like Tim said, the timing is perfect. You know,
Yeah,
there's just a lot of stories for like.
Well, it's what I was
behind
talking
Marvel and
about
DC.
earlier, right? In terms of like media the media that we see currently is very much aware um of like the way that the industry is run, and they're making points of that. How like AI has become the villain in a lot of stories and everything. Making a story about this is just like clearly the writers and workers being like, dude, this is what's happening. It's like a cry for help that people don't really listen to. I think I was talking to you, Meme, about that, right? In terms of like how you mentioned that a lot of works like this that are very much talking about workers' rights and everything, that sometimes it can be heavy-handed because they just need an outlet to talk about everything that they're going through when their friends are going through and everything in the industry.
Oh yeah. Like people are. Well, yeah, I think that kind of leads to my frustration with a lot of the criticism of the strike. Is people are kind of they don't know where the chicken and the egg are with a lot of the cringe that they're seeing in media recently, because you do have it's like you mentioned, there's a lot of heavy-handed stuff. Obviously the scripts aren't very good right now, and writers aren't really being given that chance to grow, and so people are seeing this. And I don't know if you guys have talked about it or not, but I have not. But obviously I just joined, so um but they see this and it's like, oh well, you produce this and you expect to get paid more? Fuck you. Fuck you, fucking writers. And it's like, well, let's see now. They're forced to live in some of the most expensive cities in the world. And they're probably put under a lot of stress because of strict deadlines. They're told to make changes at the last minute, often told to scrap scripts at the last minute and then rewrite them within a couple of weeks. And if they don't know where their next meal is coming from, well, let's do a biology lesson, children. When glucose isn't allowed to reach the brain in a consistent way, and meals are not consistent, brain operation is not going to be at an all-time high, and therefore you're not going to be putting out your best work because your ability to actually critically analyze your own work is compromised, and a lot of your frustrations with the process is going to start coming out in the scripts. So maybe them getting paid more might not be the worst idea. Just saying.
Well, it's the kind of thing where like, you're saying, especially in terms of like deadlines and being super stressed. There's so many studies that mention about how like if the 32-hour work week instead of 40 hours is way more beneficial for productivity, and especially working less hours per day, because you're going to actually improves productivity, because you're going to be way less productive every 12th hour of the day where you're working, instead of if you work if you work 6 hours a day or something. And the four oh no, you do all that job. But in terms of like the 4-day work week as well being introduced in a lot of places, because it actually also improves productivity. Like, it's just the kind of thing where like you can tell that being stressed and overworked doesn't help with productivity. It's just the thing where the reason that it has always been done is because companies maximizing short-term profit. You work more to give me more, and then I don't really care about like the long-term effects of that. And the long-term effects are never good. And you can see how, especially during the pandemic, people were just like quitting jobs because of that, because they're they were getting, especially the I forgot the name of the paychecks that they got from COVID relief something. Yeah, no, COVID relief is what I mean, from like American government.
Furlough scheme it was.
Sure. And they got that money and they quit their jobs because it's like, oh, I can actually, I can get enough money to live and I don't have to be overworked to death and, want to kill myself at the end of the week. Obviously, they were going to want that. So if you're working on an industry that treats you like shit, regardless of the quality of what you're putting out, and you're still overworked and you're put on some extreme deadlines and asked to do things that are completely unreasonable, you're obviously not going to put out your best work. It's just like very logical to think of that. And people are just like baffled that writers want to be paid more, but like, regardless of their work being good or not, they should be paid fairly for the work that they're doing, because they're still working. And if it doesn't do well, and sure, paid less in residuals, but that's kind of the thing. that Residuals are like completely broken as a system, which we do need to talk about, like detailing it, but it's a system that is built to not function because because it was focused on short-term profits for companies instead of actually focusing on, keeping writers well, healthy,
Mhm.
so that they could actually continue to put out good products. And if there is a declining quality for these products, these films over time, there's kind of a reason why the situation has gotten worse. Like their pay has
Yeah.
decreased and inflation has increased. It's just a very normal thing to expect that that it's gonna get worse as their situation gets worse over time.
Exactly it. Exactly it. Like, look, let's look at all the recent stinkers. Like, there's no reason Phase 4 needed to be terrible. There's no reason all the new Star Wars stuff needed to be terrible. Like, there's nothing inherent about all the stuff that's been terrible that needed to be terrible. It's just that the working conditions are not conducive to quality.
Yeah.
And it's very unfortunate. But I think people are making excuses for it because look, I think there is just this habit we've gotten into of blaming the writers for things.
Yeah.
And look, I understand the frustration, and it's a complicated conversation because there are just some some writers, like there are some writers and some creatives that, they probably are meme worthy, like Zack Snyder. I've thought about that. I've thought about reevaluating my position on him, and then I realized, wait a minute, he's still making the exact films he wants to make, and they're still very much his brand. So I don't feel too bad, ribbing him, but it is complicated, and I'm trying to be a bit more empathetic,
Mm-hmm.
and trying to really consider this stuff. And yeah, again, I think we do need to, think about, even if a writer says something cringe in an interview, that might just be cope for their working conditions.
Yeah.
That doesn't necessarily reflect on their larger character. It's just something to be conscientious of, I think.
Yeah.
I, I also think there's a bit of an industry issue as well in terms of mentoring writers. And I think a good
Yes.
example again is the MCU. They're bringing a lot of Rick and Morty writers. Sky
Rick and
especially
Morty
makes
and
this.
Community. Yeah.
Yeah, and at least Rick and Morty, for example, they had Dan Harmon as
Yeah.
the head person that they could be mentored under. Agents of Shield had Joss Whedon for season 1 to be mentored under, and I feel like that experienced talisman to guide them and shape their craft is very valuable.
Well, I mean,
And
it's
writers are
something
just
that's
finding the
actually
deep end.
interesting is that the MCU had that with Joss Whedon for phases
Yeah.
1 and 2. He actually helped a lot for James Gunn with Guardians of the Galaxy. And he worked, he oversaw everything in terms of the other phase 1 films leading up to Avengers and everything. So like, regardless of those films being amazing, you can tell that there's a very clear difference of like it was actually all, leading to a cohesive vision. And James Gunn, especially, you can tell that when he got to his own after the first Guardians film, he was, the second with Guardians 2, he was actually like really good. And the mentoring, I'm sure, really helped him.
And then Doctor Who, you got Russell T Davies in the original era, bringing in Stephen Moffat, Mark Gatiss, Paul Cornell, whoever else, and he's doing it again with some experienced faces, but also new writers to help
Yeah.
coach them into it.
Yeah, and I mean, Stephen Moffat took over and made the most popular, era of the show right after
Yeah.
him. So yeah, it's the kind of thing where like you can tell it's just like they take the writers away from Rick and Morty. And I don't know if it's that they learned the wrong lessons or that Marvel learned the wrong lessons. Like the reason they're hiring these writers isn't because of the good stuff of Rick and Morty, it's the stuff that they misunderstand, Rick and Morty and Community. It's just
Yeah, like that. Oh, sorry.
sorry you gone. I didn't actually know what I was gonna say.
Fair. So yeah, it is. Because I think there is some merit in the idea. Because I think with starting with phase 2, they were looking in like unconventional places
Mhm.
when they were hiring like writers and directors. They were looking at TV, they were looking at up and comers and stuff. And you know, they were thinking in like that mentorship sort of way, where it's like they have a more they probably have a more unique creative vision, and they might have a more unique way to do it than a more seasoned person or something.
Uh-huh.
So if we can what's the word, if we can I want to say fertilize, but that's not the word. If we can nourish that, that's the word.
Nourish.
If we can nourish that and you know, put them in an environment where, you know, we can take care of the VFX, but they can take care of the story. You know, that might be something. You know, there's some merit to that idea if it's done correctly. But by the time they got to phase 4, it felt like they were basically hiring the first person to come in the door, and they were expecting them to produce something that was worthy to actually be put on television or to be put on a movie screen.
Yeah.
And it just a lot of these guys, you know, it's like you said, they probably weren't there yet, and they probably could have been there if there was like if they were you know, given the right mentorship. And you know, the way you probably want to do that is you maybe give them one episode where they're given some oversight and some guidance.
Yeah, you
But
hire, especially
instead
with
it
TV shows, it's kind of simple, right? You hire a more experienced writer to be the showrunner, and then you hire a lot of other writers that, you know, in the future will continue to work with you, but that, you know, aren't running the show. They have someone overseeing their work. That's how a lot of TV
Exactly.
works.
Exactly. Exactamundo, as they
I
say.
I just can't believe, especially in Marvel's case, to not have James Gunn be that kind of mentor in the way Joss Whedon was. It's very weird,
Hmm.
given how DC has him. James Gunn would have
Yeah.
been perfect because they wanted to do the cosmic side even more
Yeah.
and
I
deal with
think
a
that
lot more wild concepts.
was the original plan, wasn't it? He was going to be like the head of the cosmic side, and then eventually fired Butterfingers, whoops, and then eventually one thing led to another, and then he came back for Guardians 3. Then now he's over at DC. So I think that was the original plan, but the fact that they didn't at least, and I'm not sure if they maybe offered it, but like the fact they didn't at least try to at least get someone of his caliber to do something similar
Hmm.
is just a bit odd.
Yeah, it just shows how undervalued. Like this is the problem with Hollywood, is that they, well, if they don't even at this point they don't even value how good their visual effects look. Like with how shitty the MCU looks at this point, and how overworked the VFX artists are. Which, by the way, I don't I think you guys were kind of touching on it, but the fact that people can see and appreciate how overworked the VFX artists are, but they can't do the same for the writers, is a bit odd to
Yeah, we've
me.
made that point.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's just everyone's being overworked. Everyone who is not like a big corporate person is just, you know, completely being forced to burn the candle at both ends, because they really don't have a choice at this point.
Yeah.
Didn't the VFX didn't Marvel's VFX people decide to unionize?
Yeah, they're trying to unionize
recently?
right now, yeah. Which is something
Yeah.
we most definitely support, because they fucking need it and deserve it. They deserve
Oh,
to
fuck
not
yeah.
be fucking overworked. Did you see one of the VFX people who mentioned working in one division? They said basically that like they were already being forced to work like 18-hour days, and that
My God.
until the last episode was done, which was like 3 months, they weren't allowed to take any breaks, like weekends or vacation or holiday, you know, nothing. They had to work for 3 months straight, 18-hour days that they were already working for ages, just to complete the finale, which also did not look
Yeah.
good. Wonder why? Just
Yeah, it looked garbo, and I don't blame them for it looking garbo. I
Yeah.
don't think they could even see that. I know that when I'm overworking myself, and I'm editing something, I can only see like the editing errors once I've gotten like a few nights sleep after a particularly
Yeah, it's why I
strenuous
usually I go to
session.
sleep and then I rewatch the video the next day to catch the editing mistakes. You're like, okay, now let's see what I was fucking up when I was editing at 3 in the morning.
Yep. And same principle applies to writing as well. You can't actually see the writing flaws if you are not cognitively well enough to And not even sense of mental illness or anything, just in terms of taking care of yourself. You
Yeah.
know?
It's insane as well because you think in any other industry, I don't know, engineering, if you fuck up project management that bad, you'd be fired as a project manager. You'd be gone.
Mm.
Yeah.
So
My sister's a
the fact that
product
someone,
manager.
Well,
yeah,
she's
oh yeah,
fired.
she is.
Yeah.
Yeah, she's gone. And so whoever the individual project managers allocate, and even Feige, I'm like, the only reason they're probably still there is because Disney are like, we're still getting the fucking money in.
Yeah. Well, and the thing is
Yes.
as well, and it's something I wanted to mention when we said it, that, not having a writer, how underappreciated they are. It is fucking wild to me that they have a producer run Marvel, not a writer, Because, like, the way DC did it is something that I think that is the way to do it, right? They got a writer in James Gunn and an executive in, what's his name? Safran. Something Safran.
Yes,
Yeah.
Saffron.
Yeah. It's
Yeah.
like you have someone to take care of the business side of stuff, but you have a writer there as well, someone who understands the craft and is actually going to write and direct a few of the films. So you actually have a creative vision and someone who can take care of, the books. It's like that's the way to do it, right? It just seems like the
Yeah,
logical
well-
way to do it, and Marvel still hasn't understood that.
Yeah, what's weird about it is that Feige would actually, if he were paired up with a writer, he would actually be kind of an ideal producer because I can believe that he is because he's got he does have a long history with Marvel. I can believe he's actually passionate about those characters. Like he's him and
he
Jeff
produced,
Johns are close friends going back.
He produced Marvel films even before the MCU, right?
Yeah, famously,
X-Men,
like
for example.
on the
Yeah.
set of X-Men, Brian Singer didn't want any comics there. He didn't want any, and Kevin Feige actually snuck comics onto the set for Hugh Jackman to read them.
Yeah,
And now
so I
we're
can-
with Secret Invasion where the opposite's happening.
Yeah, where he said, "Don't read the comics."
Yeah. He became the
Yeah,
very thing it swore to destroy.
Yeah, I can believe. Like it is that interesting thing. Like, how far does this brain rot go up the chain? Like, has Kevin Feige been so overworked by Bob Iger or Bob Chapek or whatever that he's become a different entity from what he was so many years ago? It is this interesting,
Well, there is a
interesting
thing to be
think
said
this stuff.
about like being overworked, that you stop, liking your work and you just do it, not only as an obligation, but like you see it as like you need to become an executive. A lot of media actually portrays that idea, which is something I find interesting. I mean,
Yes.
even Oppenheimer said that Oppenheimer became a politician while they were building the bomb. He wasn't a scientist anymore, because he
Yes.
was, in charge of running all that. So I kind of think that, and also, I do feel kind of bad for Kevin Feige. Yeah, because he mentioned when they were working under Bob Chapek that he was the one who made it so that they had to release 1,000 fucking projects every year. Like, he made that decision, and when Bob Iger got there, he was like, "No, let's slow it down a bit." I was like, "Yeah, you can tell."
Please.
Like, it was like the Phase 4 and 5 stuff. There's like a lot of shit being released. You can tell that was they did not have time enough time to work on it, and Kevin Feige was just forced to do it because Bob Chapek wanted it.
Yeah, exactly. And I think I think you're highlighting something very interesting there, and that is it's important to not be reductive and try to boil it down to one person, because I think it's probably tempting to boil it down to one person with all this, when really it's a larger systemic issue. It is the fact that the unions there are certain reforms need to be made, certain because the thing it's you what are these unions for if not to fight against the worst parts of human nature, which is to take advantage of loopholes and different X, Y, and Z. You need fine print there saying you are not allowed to do that. If you do, you get in very serious trouble, sir. I don't think people
Fighting for workers' rights is always something that has been hard for a lot of people to do, and it has been a battle fought for centuries now.
Yes.
So it is something that still goes on, and it's fucking hard to fight against the system, because you're fighting against the system, you're not just fighting against people. That's what the issue is.
Yes. Exactly. Like because the thing is, when people actively benefit from the system, it is a very it's human for it to be very difficult for them to accept change, even if even if that change would benefit a lot of other people. And that's why, you do need, a big push against it. You need a certain amount of pressure to change it. And then eventually, when those changes are made, the better people who were benefiting from that will eventually admit, okay, I was caught up in that beneficial cycle, and now I can see how this was good. Like, I think it takes truly exceptional people sometimes to actually actively sacrifice parts of their income, even if their income is huge, to
Yeah, it's the kind of thing
you know,
that,
yeah,
billionaires
in
are
the moment, yeah.
are way too, like, they're more invested in, like, the amount of money they're making than, like, people who make, like, a living wage only, right? They're just like, oh,
Yeah.
I need to make more. I need to save every ounce of money I can. Like, fucking Amazon having videos telling you to not start a union, to not unionize. Like, oh, like playing at the workplace.
Jesus.
It's insane,
It's
you know?
it's it's why a good example of a executive was Satoru Iwata for Nintendo. When the Wii U was a commercial failure, he refused to let the employees take the pay cut, and he took massive pay cuts
Yeah,
in his
that's
salary
what you
to
should do.
subsidize the
Like,
losses.
these executives
Yeah.
already have enough money, and it's not the kind of thing where, like, oh, lose all your money. Just like, you can keep it. Just, treat your workers right.
Just don't buy a yacht that year.
Yeah, don't buy a yacht and give that money to your workers. It's fucking.
Iwata's dead now, unfortunately, but he was a good example.
Yeah,
Yes,
there are people who
exactly.
are good.
Yeah, I remember Hugh Jackman, very intentionally took a pay cut so that Logan could be R-rated. I think that's like a more
Oh
minor
yeah, I
example, but that
remember
just
that.
sprung to mind.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I'm not really a huge fan of Taylor Swift. Not not I don't really care about her in terms of music. I'm just saying, like, as a person, like, her environmental issues in terms of riding her jet 1 billion times over the year, but that I'm not really a fan of. But her recent tour, she paid like $20 million in bonuses to, like, her people who went with her on tour. So, like, the bus driver and, like, everyone, like, who worked backstage and everything, she paid, like, each one of them, like, I think $20 million. And I'm like, that's really good. These people were just, like,
Good on
regular
her.
workers, and if you have that amount of money, you should use that to benefit these people. So I actually do really appreciate that. That was, like, this week,
Yeah.
so it's, like, again, a recent example.
Yeah, well, it's the kind of thing where it's like, you want to set up your principles for how you want to treat people below you when you are below, and you want to make sure that as you go, because it is so easy to, I don't believe, I think it's reductive to say that, power corrupts and all that, because it's very different depending on the person, but it does get easier to become complacent the
Yeah.
more wealth you
Yeah, because if it's
accumulate. So it
benefiting
is important.
you, you are more likely to just, be okay with it, even if it is hurting other people. It's just
Yeah,
human
like,
nature to,
it's
want to defend yourself, your own position, everything.
yeah, especially I think I sometimes I wonder if people, it's this interesting I just find the psychology fascinating, where I wonder if you came from, like, people who go from rags to riches really quickly and don't have a huge transition. I wonder if they're the least prepared. Because you would think they would be ultra altruistic, but then suddenly they don't have to worry. They go from having to worry about everything to not having to worry about anything. But if they were in, like, a very impoverished place, like, they probably weren't being, like, super altruistic at that point. So maybe they haven't had the time to really think about how to be altruistic, and they might still be in that starvation mindset, and
Yeah.
that's how you get
Well, I
sometimes
think
these
the best
situations.
examples of that are football players, because a lot of them come from impoverished places, especially Brazilian players, and they got rich really fast. And I have not seen many football players, especially from Brazil, that are actually, like, willing and wanting to spend their money and helping people. The best example is Sadio Mane. He's played for Liverpool. He won a humanitarian award last year. The amount of money he spends is like most of his money he spends in helping his home country, Senegal, in terms of like building
that's
schools
wonderful.
and funding things like that. Like he's a fantastic human being. So it is a
Oh,
thing where,
cool.
yeah, so it is a thing where like some people do it and it's great when they do it, but most footballers just like really like the money and the fame that they get from it.
Yeah.
Which is why a
Uh,
lot of them are willing to go to fucking Saudi Arabia and get paid millions and millions per year, despite the human rights issues there and everything, which is an issue that Jeb and I have talked a lot about amongst ourselves. We really don't
yeah.
like the way they're destroying football, but that's beside the point.
Yeah.
Um,
Sports.
yes, and I was gonna say something. I forgot what it was.
Something about football.
No, we were mentioning people making money. Oh yeah, I think as well because one thing that I find really interesting is a lot of actors, famous actors, most of them
Mm-hmm.
are famous and in the industry because they're nepo babies, because their family was famous and then they became famous because of that. I mean, Jamie Lee Curtis is an example of that. She was
Yeah.
hired to do Halloween specifically. One of the main reasons was because her mom was in Psycho. And
Not
she
what
had,
you know, it's who you know.
yeah, exactly. And she, but the thing is that's funny is her saying, like, there are interviews of her like saying, no, all you need to do to get into Hollywood is hard work. You don't even need to like go into university or study film or anything. You just need to work hard and believe in yourself. And it's like, it is interesting that she says that,
Mm-hmm.
because she
Yeah.
was from a very privileged position. And one thing that I think that it happens with these people is that like like billionaires and everything, they come from privileged positions. I mean, fucking Elon Musk says he's self-made, but his dad owned an emerald mine in South Africa that he heavily profited from to make his career.
Yeah.
And so like I think these people, they want to think that they made it, so they deserve everything they're getting, every money, all the money they have and all the success they have, like people like Bob Iger and everything, when in fact like the people that are actually working to get you that amount of money, they're the ones who actually deserve the recognition and the pay. I think especially
Yeah.
with like Jeff Bezos, he's the richest man in the world, and he just like he's the one who refuses the most to pay his workers fairly. Like it's a meme about how poorly Amazon workers are treated and paid. Like I think it's just
Yeah,
like
exactly.
there's a disconnect between the executives and like the actual reality of the world, which is something that Tin mentioned earlier, of just like they're just not knowing, they don't understand, they're completely out of touch.
Yeah, I completely agree. It's because they are, because I don't doubt that there is a degree, there is hard work involved, but what they don't seem to understand is that not everyone has Hollywood connections. Like maybe you do have to work hard in order to get within a certain position, but in order to get into that position, you need to actually be in reach of having the opportunities to be in that position. And I think it's revealing of their perspective as someone who hasn't had to, like someone like me, for example, is going to have a much harder barrier to entry into Hollywood
Yeah,
than someone who was born and raised and bred in LA and has been rubbing, you know, shoulders with producers and agents since they were like first able to speak. You know,
yeah,
it's it's it is I think this is why a lot of people start to feel guilty about their position and their privilege later in life when they begin to gain that perspective, because um they thought that it was exclusively hard work up until a point, and then they realize, well, actually a lot of it was luck,
yeah.
which
Yeah, they're not
and I
willing
think,
to admit for most of their lives, but sometimes they get to a point where they can't understand that.
yeah, and then they don't quite know what to do with that information.
Yeah,
So yeah, so that's where it gets complicated.
yeah. One thing I wanted to get to, if that was okay, is to read the actual demands so we can actually talk about them like one for
Oh
one.
yeah.
Yeah,
Um,
sure.
Yeah, I didn't know if we'd done that yet.
No, not yet. I was waiting for you to get here, and then we just talked for over an hour after you got here. Anyway,
Neato, that usually happens when I show up.
that's good though. The privilege will always undervalue how much their own privilege affects them. Yeah, it's yeah, people like to think that they worked hard for what they earn, regardless of how privileged they actually are. Anyway, all right. First demand. I will talk about first about the writers, and then we can talk about the actors. All right. First demand is increased pay. The guild is seeking higher compensation for the writers across the board. Though there are more jobs available to WGA members than ever before because of the proliferation of streaming services, pay for most writers is down. 10 years ago, 33% of TV writers were paid the minimum rate. Now, according to the WGA, 49% are. Accounting for inflation, writer pay has declined 14% in the last 5 years. The median weekly writer-producer pay is down 23% over the last decade, with inflation factored in. Writers say many of their members aren't even making a living wage. They're also seeking increases for their pension plan and health fund. So, I mean, it's just very reasonable. They want to get a living
Very
wage.
bare basics, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. Need to survive, to live, to write.
But yeah, this again comes to
live
like a
to-
systemic issue where you can see like in America, the minimum wage hasn't increased in like I think 15 years, even though inflation has been a huge issue, especially during the Trump era. So yeah, it's the kind of thing you're like, yes, it's a good thing the unions fight for, better pay and just living wages. But it's a thing that needs to be addressed on a more systemic issue than just on a more systemic level than just, specific unions, because everyone deserves to make enough to live, right? It's something that is just so insane to me that the minimum wage isn't the living wage, it's less. Like how's that possible? How's the minimum wage, the minimum amount of money you make, not enough to make you survive, let you survive? Absolutely insane.
Yeah, I do wonder if it's a case of like it was once a livable wage and then inflation took over and then
They just never
eventually
adjusted for inflation.
yeah, exactly. So it became and because it slips gradually, it might be something that someone noticed kind of when it started, but it was like, oh, it's just a little bit more expensive.
Yeah.
It's just a little bit. It just keeps climbing, and then eventually go, wait, what the fuck happened?
Yeah, that's usually how it goes in terms of that. It's just like they're paid. Well, it's the kind of thing where you can notice, like less than a century ago, like 1950s, you could live on one. People like
Whole dollar.
couples could live on one salary.
Yeah.
But and that's part of why women were housewives. And now if you like, even if you live on two salaries, you could still might not even be able to afford a home. Well, probably won't be able to afford a home because it's insanely expensive to buy a home. Like rent is also insanely high because tenants are also fucking over the renters. So I was just like,
Yeah.
I mean, housing should be a basic right anyway, guaranteed by like
Yeah.
the state, especially when so many houses are unoccupied, but they still let tenants ask for an insane amount of money to let their renters live there.
Yeah, well, if you think about it, like if you have it as a basic right, when the state provides stuff like that, it probably would be better for the economy long run, because
Yes,
when
there's
people are less
actually
stressed out, they can work
studies.
more.
Well, there's actually studies regarding that if you guarantee their basic rights, people are more likely to pay and spend money, especially if you have, for example, universal basic income. People are more likely
Yes.
to spend that money because they actually have money and they don't need to worry where their next paycheck is coming from. So it's just better for the economy overall. It's just something that, right-wing people aren't
Yeah.
willing to accept because they say that people are going to be lazy by receiving money from the government. And they're like, oh, where are we going to get this money from? Or like, tax the rich. Like, we can't do that. The rich can't be taxed. That's insane.
Mm.
So-
Yeah, it's it is yeah, they because you got to think about it. Because not only will people be more likely to work, but they're more likely, if they're not feeling the pressure to work, they're also going to build more basic life skills that are
Yeah.
going to make them more employable.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, if you have more time to yourself, you can actually do things that you enjoy doing. Insane stuff.
Exactly.
And
You are so right.
it's why Elon Musk has hundreds of hours on Elden Ring, and I still haven't played it for over an hour.
See, he's building his basic life skills there while you're being left behind.
True. His basic life skills. But yeah, anything we want to mention in terms of increased pay, Jap? Or can we move on to the next?
I think it's a proof of economic failure if you can't match pay to inflation rates.
Yes, I agree.
And blaming it on the people that want a fair salary is callous and cowardly, like our current government are doing, in which we've been seeing pay cuts since 2010.
Jeez.
Except if you're in the private sector. So I'm a very lucky soul. I'm in the private sector. I work in defence, so I get good pay rise. I get good salary.
And he also knows state secrets that he refuses to tell us. Outrageous.
I can say on record I do not know any state secrets.
Yeah, that's what they want you to tell us. We know the truth.
So I'm in a very fortunate position, even in terms of my renting. We just got an extension for another year, and our rent is only going up by £25 per month, which is insane, given the interest rates have gone up to 5.5%. I think in this country, and inflation's still at 6% maybe low 7%. So again, myself and my partner are very lucky people, whereas the majority of the UK are, thinking where their next meal is, or first time homeowners are having to put their house up for sale, move in with their parents, or start renting, which in of itself is a struggle. It's a shit show. And the fact that workers are being blamed is insane to me,
Yeah.
especially if you're a doctor, if you're a nurse, if you're a police officer, as much as we go ACAB, stuff like that, anyone in the public sector, they're receiving very minor pay rises. And that's why we're seeing strikes at the airports, trains, teaching, medical, strikes everywhere in the UK.
Yeah.
We're in a shit show.
Yeah, and that's
So,
all
yeah.
around the world, not just the UK, man. I don't know what
oddly,
in terms of sorry, you go first because my point is very different from what you're saying.
I think in Germany it's pretty stable. France, it's stable except with pension. Spain is
France
stable.
has a lot of a lot of protests. But if you look, those countries that have the best, like in terms of what's the word? The welfare state stuff, social welfare, whatever, like in terms of like Sweden and Finland, those countries, the Nordic European countries are
South
actually
Korea.
Yeah, those places
I mean,
are
fucking communists.
no, socialism, don't worry. It's just socialism. People hate. Yeah, I know. It's just yeah. People hate fucking Americans and like, you can't do that. That's socialism. Like, why is that bad? Because it's socialism. That's such a good point.
Great point.
Yeah.
Moving on.
Anyway, what I wanted to say was that I don't know in terms of like what the defense budget is in military defense budget is in the UK, but something that really annoys me in America is the way that like they have trillions that they spend on their defense budget, on military and everything, to wage these stupid, useless wars. and then they just ask like, oh, where are we gonna take money from to, like, you know, have a universal basic income or pay for housing for our population and everything. Like, there's a very easy place to do that. And you know, you're saying like in terms of pay cuts and everything in the UK, I don't know what the situation is, that if it's similar at all.
Mhm.
It's we're one of we're worse than the US because we have the we're still feeling the after effects of leaving the EU.
Oh,
We
yeah.
were one of the worst countries with COVID, and we had Liz Truss for 50 days, kamikaze that economy. So we had that instability. We had Boris Johnson. Sunak is just in a not even the bare minimum. He's just coasting by. So we're in a very terrible position. Very
Mm.
bad.
Mm,
Yeah.
amazing. All right.
British, yeah.
All right. So anyway, better residuals. This is where I want to get to, especially because the residuals thing is like the biggest complaint on both actors and writers' parts, because of just how streaming services have absolutely destroyed it, and you know, made it so that these workers can't actually live, because that's where most of their money came from.
Yep. You need
Especially
to.
between
It's
jobs.
not just about getting paid for your initial work. It's about getting paid for the use of your work over time.
Yeah, for the value of your work. If it's netting money to
Yeah,
the company
exactly.
that is, you know, showing your work, you know, on TV or whatever, or on a streaming service, you should actually be paid a fair amount for your work on making that thing. It's quite simple.
Yeah.
Yeah. To explain residuals for people watching, because we've mentioned it a few times, it's basically the way it was that if you work on a TV show, you're an actor, let's say, and you're a supporting actor. Your TV show is shown on TV. For every time it's shown, you're gonna get paid for it, a certain amount. For every rerun that it has for years later. It's why the Friends actors got paid like 10 million per year up until a couple years ago, because of, you know, Friends reruns. I assume they're still paid a lot because Friends does show on TV a lot still. It's just that people watch it less on
Yeah.
TV, but you know. And so you would be paid like a relative amount of the amount of screen time you had, to the amount of like the amount of times that the show was rerun, the amount of episodes you're in, you know, everything relating to that. So if you are the main actor in a famous movie and it's being shown on TV and a bunch of people watch it, you're going to be paid a lot. To a point where people used to be paid like for a single rerun, like a main actor would be paid like $20,000, would receive a check for $20,000 for one rerun. But nowadays, for an entire year, you're lucky if you're paid like 13,000. That's like from HBO. Because the thing that's changed is that instead of it being according to the value of your work, it's just shared. It's the money's shared regardless of how popular a TV show is. So basically, they get the amount of money that, for example, Netflix made in a month from new subscriptions. That money will go like, it won't go proportionally to the most famous, most popular shows. It would just be distributed equally between all shows and all parties and everything like that. To a point where a lot of famous TV shows, for example, I remember like Euphoria, for example. I remember a couple of years ago where Sydney Sweeney was saying that residuals were a big part of, you know, being paid, but from Euphoria, she had basically made nothing from residuals. Euphoria being one of the most famous shows in the world, and she had been one of the main characters. And a lot of actors are getting like checks that are like worth a few cents, like sometimes less than $1. That was literally a check worth $0. One of the actors from Lizzie McGuire showed a picture of that on Instagram. So the streaming services have completely killed residuals, and you get a show like Sandman, who was like top 10, you know, for ages on Netflix, or have Wednesday, and those people who worked on it are not getting like basically any money from residuals. They're getting way too little, and these residuals were how these actors and writers, because everyone related to the production would actually get residuals, and that's how they made their living mostly because the,
You're
you
not
know
always working.
yeah, it's because like they get the amount of money from their first pay from just getting their salary from working, and then like until they got another job, which is Hollywood, very competitive place, they actually could live off of their residuals. But now that residuals are done, a lot of writers and actors just don't have the ability to like survive anymore from the money they're making, because most of their pay has been cut from between jobs for them. So the value of their work has just like been stripped a lot. And yeah, there needs to be a way to like fix that. The WGA is, I think the way that they're asking for it is like basically gonna increase like 76%, like the pay for residuals is what they're asking for. Just like
Yeah.
in general. But yeah, I mean, it's just like they're basically asking for the work that they're doing be valued correctly. The amount of, the more money you bring to the company that you're working, the more money you make off of that, And it's not like, it's just very simple. Like you work and your show goes super popular, you should be paid really well for that, right? You're just making money for the company, you should make some amount of the money for yourself.
Yeah, exactly. A lot of this is just it feels like you have things like streaming, which I will be completely fair and say that there are things about streaming that I like. I like that shows can have bigger budgets and stuff like that. What I don't like is that it feels like a pump and dump, where
Yes.
like they're getting in like very low tier talent, who aren't really ready for their positions because they're cheaper to afford, so they can maximize profit outputs. They're bypassing the residual system, so no one can really get paid beyond that initial piddly sum that they're given. And then they're shoved back out into the world. Their content is shoved into people's living rooms, and everyone hates it. And then people start abusing them for the work that was probably the fault of the corporate overlords that put them in that position in the first place.
Yeah. Jap, do you have anything you want to say?
What the fuck
Is happening?
I saw you have.
Jap?
I just saw
What?
there's
That
sound
wasn't me.
effects.
That.
There were sound effects you can put in the call now. I didn't
Oh.
realize you could steal them from other servers.
Oh,
I
did you
was
not know
scared.
that soundboards exist?
I knew the soundboard existed. I just didn't know I could take them from servers.
Yeah.
And I was like, oh, what does this button do?
Okay. Now I understand what just happened. Okay. Anyway, Jab. Residuals, what do you
Hello.
think?
I think it's fucking insane how bizarrely calculated it is. I would really want an insight on how exactly they come to the amounts they do, because a lot of it just doesn't add up to me.
It just makes no sense. I mean, to compare, and it's something that makes complete sense, and it's just the way that it should be for movie and TV streaming services, is the way that Spotify does it. Like if you listen more to a particular artist, if you listen to a bunch of their songs, you listen to them over and over like 100 times, the artist is going to be paid more from you listening more to them. But in terms of like Netflix, you can watch a show like 100 times over, and the people working on it are just not going to be paid more. And like I don't think that makes any sense. It's just like if someone is more popular and you listen to them more, you're paying for the streaming service to watch that, or to listen to their music. They should just get a better compensation, because they're providing the value for what you're paying for.
Yes, I think you raised a really good point with Spotify, because that is a way better system because because you know exactly how that's going to work. You know that it is contingent upon X number of views. You get I'm pretty sure if you're the artist, they're transparent with how many views you're getting, and they'll pay you like per X number. I think YouTube does a similar thing, and you would think it would work across the board, but as soon as there's like more than a few people involved with an individual production, suddenly the overlords want to keep the money to themselves, and they saw streaming as a way to do that, because there's not really as much regulation around that, as far as I know.
Yeah.
Would that be correct to say?
Yeah, it's a fairly new thing. So not as
Yeah.
much
So
regulation. So much so that, we had only Netflix for like ages. And so there was this big, which was, pretty good at the start, but now this is overall thing where like so many streaming services and, just hurting the industry and the people working on it.
it's a lack of oversight, and
Yeah.
I think as soon as I saw that everyone was launching a streaming service, I was like, my God, this is going to it's going to become so unsustainable that I predict eventually you're just going to get one big package deal with all the streaming services, and they're all going to have to take that deal at a loss because their own individual services have become so unprofitable. And I feel like we're in the process of that happening right now with all this shit
Yeah.
going
It's
down.
something Jabba said since I've known him, that streaming services are gonna die soon because it's just not sustainable.
Yeah,
I,
they're gonna
I,
at least change form.
I am the soothsayer.
Yeah. Yeah, it's the kind of thing where like I think it's just gonna end up being the system of what it was for a long time of buying digital stuff. You just buy something to watch on like iTunes, you buy something to watch on Amazon, instead of like paying for watching a bunch of stuff. Because I don't think it's sustainable to keep it the way it is. And if you actually pay to buy something specifically, that actually will help in terms of residuals. You know how many sales there were because of X or Y thing.
Yeah, well, I think what it needs to be at the very least is that there needs to be some laws or something passed that says the streaming services have to make their numbers, if not public, at least available to the unions, and that they need those numbers to equate to residuals. Because I think a big problem is they're under no obligation
Yeah,
to reveal
that's
to
actually a
anyone.
really
Yeah.
good point. Yeah, because the streaming service, they can hide their numbers, so they don't actually need to tell people, how much, how many people watch the X or Y show, and if they don't need to tell that, they don't need to pay people fairly for it.
Exactly.
Even though they still
Exactly.
use the popularity of things to sell it, to market things, and be like, oh, here's the Netflix top 10, and it's everything.
Yeah, exactly. They can keep things vague enough to promote things, but they are under no obligation to reveal that information that should be available so that these residuals can be extracted from them.
Yeah. Alrighty-o. So next thing, staffing requirements. I don't actually really know about this one. Let's see. The one union wants TV shows to staff a certain number of writers for a period of time. At issue is the rising practice of mini rooms, where only a handful of writers are working on a series. Such writer rooms are often employed during development before a show is greenlit. That means writers can be working on a series that doesn't get picked up for as much as a year after they worked on it, or not at all. Jeez. The process has circumvented some of the protections WGA members have from being overworked and understaffed. The use of mini rooms accelerated during the pandemic, with writers often meeting by Zoom, a still commonplace practice.
Mm-hmm.
So I just was just like, hey, if you hire people to work on something.
Yeah, so can someone explain the issue with that? I just think my brain's not processing.
Yeah,
that.
I'm trying to understand it too. Hold on. Staff a
Yeah.
certain number of writers for a period of time.
I think it's so when you employ your writers, you do it within the right period of time. You don't do it so much in advance that the product might get shelved and they've just wasted that work.
Yeah, and I also think another part of it is that, like, let's say they hire like 10 writers, but before the show starts, only 5 people were working on it. In terms of like development, pre-production, and then the show gets canceled. The other 5 writers who still think they're gonna work on a show, maybe like a year after they were hired, they're not actually like getting paid or getting on other work because they were hired to do this one that was canceled. So I think that's the idea.
Yeah. Oh shizzle.
Yeah, that's an interesting one. It's a very specific writer's thing that I assume you need to be in the industry to fully understand the implications of, but I can understand why they're asking for it as well.
Yeah. It's something I can't really comment too much on, but it does sound like there's something about that process that's really screwing people.
Yeah. I mean, it's just like I think it's the
I
kind of
thi-
thing that happens a lot where like you're hired to do work on X and then X gets canceled. But like until it gets canceled, until like you're just working on it, you're not finding other work, and you're not going to be paid fully for the work you did on the thing that gets canceled because, especially because there's going to be no residuals because it's never going to be released and everything like that. So, yeah, I think that's kind of the idea.
Yeah. Yeah, you
Well, I-
you at least want people being paid for that work, even if it doesn't go to air. Like
Yeah,
it's just fair, you know?
yeah, because they worked anyway. It's not their fault that it was canceled. So.
Yeah, it's like you're not paying concept artists or something for a canceled project.
Yeah. You're gonna say something, Joe?
yeah, I think the Zoom meetings refer to as well suitable environment, because obviously before COVID you had your writers' rooms, whereas now they're more likely to do it across Zoom meetings, and that might not always be so feasible to get that creative output due to the constraints around remote working, and especially in the sense of it's just you in your home environment, you're not around a team, so you can't
Yeah.
build bonds as much and get that chemistry.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, virtual reality is not at the point where it's quite recreating the subtle nuance. Because this is actually very interesting. I can actually contribute something here. Is that um, your ability to create memories and to absorb experiences is actually reduced when you are only experiencing things, these interactions via a screen rather than in person, because a lot of memory is based on that in person experience. There are a lot of additional stimuli that you're taking on board there, which is actually, I think that was the motivation, or at least the stated motivation for Zuckerberg's push of the metaverse, because he was having Zoom meetings all the time, and
Yeah.
productivity was down because of the fact that people weren't remembering things and stuff. And I think he went a little insane and went like, "Oh, we need to revolutionize this and push virtual reality because we can't continue working like this." And
Yeah.
then all that stuff happened. But I think that was the initial,
Yeah, a big part of it was
yeah,
saying to replace, Zoom meetings, just do work meetings on Meta. They should
yeah.
it's the stupid way to replace it. You should just have in-person meetings. Um,
Yeah, Google has a better solution where they've actually, like, I don't know how close this would ever be to being implemented, but actually, Marcus Brownlee actually put a video about it that might be worth looking at in your own time, where they've actually produced like a 3D screen that's specifically designed for video calls. That's kind of nifty, and it actually does fill in a lot of those gaps. Again, it's more like a cool piece of tech at this point than it is something that is necessarily going to be practically implemented anytime soon. But I think this is something a lot of companies, especially tech companies, are thinking about after COVID, is the fact that, we are doing things more remotely, which is kind of a necessity in certain spaces because things are going more international now and people are trying to get more people from more spaces into their environment and into their ecosystems. And so we are coming up against this issue of the fact that remote communication, although I'm going to be fair and say that it is way better than it has ever been, there's still a lot of limitations around it that we haven't really considered until now, which is interesting in of itself. And I imagine what we're seeing with that specific demand is probably reflective of that reality. Oh, there it is. There it is. I found the link. So yeah, you can look at this one in your own time, but it's kind of nifty. I'm a big tech person, so I'm keeping up with this stuff anyway. So
right.
you can look at that in your own
Hey,
time.
welcome to the club.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's a very Jeb thing, to be fair. I'll post it in chat if people are interested to watch it as well.
Yeah, yeah, it's pretty neat. It's what happens when you grow up watching Star Trek. Is that I was, funnily enough, I was speaking about this to my therapist the other day. Is I feel like I'm one of the few people who has like an equal investment in science, tech, and art and storytelling, and so it puts me in a very awkward position when either party is talking about the other as like these big horrible demon monsters, and it's like you guys actually have a lot more in common than you think. But anyway,
Yeah. All right. So, next one. Shorter exclusivity deals. Many of the rules around TV writing are also still based on a now increasingly outdated model. Writers might have once expected to spend almost a year working in a 22 to 25 episode season of broadcast TV. Now the average season is much shorter. Popular shows like Bridgerton might have only 8 episodes. Not only does that diminish writers per episode pay, it can limit them from working on other programs if they're tied to longer terms of exclusivity. I mean, yeah, that makes sense. If you're gonna work less on something, less time on something, you should be allowed to not be tied to a specific company for as much time as you were before when you were making longer shows.
I had a complete attentional lapse while that was being read. I'm so sorry.
Basically, writers are they're asking for, like, if they're working on a TV show that's like 8 episodes long, their exclusivity deal with the company that they're working with should be shorter than it used to be when they were working on a show that was like 22 to 25 episodes long, you know, because they're going to be
Oh, I
working
see.
less time there, and they might want to find other work. And if they want to find other work, they might want to look at another company. So yeah, just to help them find other work, considering now that, you know, most writers are working less for less time on a TV show, because TV shows are much shorter. And you know,
Yeah.
TV shows being shorter means that writers get paid less on a per episode basis, which also means, yeah, they would need to look for work more faster. So
Yeah.
it just makes sense.
Which makes sense. So yeah, so it's just about shortening that exclusivity period. Is
Yeah.
that it?
Yeah, pretty much.
Yeah. Okay.
It's like,
Okay,
yeah, you
cool.
made a
Just
show
making
for
sure I
Netflix, and like you can't work with another company for a year, but your show is like 6 episodes long. You're kind of fucked. So
Yeah.
yeah,
So it's that non-competition clause sort of
Yeah.
thing.
exactly. Which I get why companies do it, but I hate it, to be honest. Just let people work
Yeah,
on
like-
whatever company they want to.
Yeah, like it makes sense from like a purely business point of view, but
Yeah.
from like a humanitarian point of view, it's really fucked.
Yeah.
The only compromise that they should have is you get the exclusivity bonus. They really want it that bad.
Yeah.
Yeah, something like that. It makes more sense with tech companies where there's insider secrets that they probably don't want getting out, at least for a certain amount of time. But
Yeah, it's for this is like, you're talented and we're not gonna hire you to do something else, but you also can't work on another company. So it's like, okay. You just don't want me to work.
yeah, like it doesn't make sense for the media industry. It really doesn't, especially if their writers are not like if it's a VFX person, maybe if they're working with like a very exclusive piece of software that they don't want going down the chain. But this is like, you know, what are writers going to bring to another company that is going to, outside of just their raw talent?
Yeah, it's generally they just
yes.
don't want their talent to be brought to another company, even though they're not going to be utilizing it themselves until, you know, until the exclusivity deal ends. It's just really silly to me.
Yeah, exactly.
And the last one is assurance on AI. Writers are also increasingly concerned that producers will use artificial intelligence to write scripts or at least fill in the blanks on unfinished screenplays. The fast advancing technology has potentially widespread ramifications for Hollywood, and in some cases may be a useful tool, but the WGA wants production companies to agree to safeguards around its usage. I mean, that's also really fair. I am curious what your perspective is on it, Meme, because we have talked a little bit about it, and I mentioned it before you got here, but you're the most positive person here in relation to AI, I think. So
Yeah, I would say so. I think it's because I'm looking at it like I'm looking at it as I'm trying because again I'm pretty tech savvy and stuff like that, and I do see it as an extraordinary tool that could be revolutionary for writers' rooms if utilized correctly. However, I do because I can see it from both perspectives. I can see it from like the perspective of I can see it how it could be very useful as a tool, and especially as it continues to advance and get better, and you can program algorithms that are better at helping specifically with storytelling rather than being more general purpose. And we're starting to see a little bit of that now. We're seeing large language models that are programmed only on like high quality like academic sources rather than just general data scraping, which shows that we're starting to get a bit more specialized. But also they can lighten the load in the writer's room, I think, a lot, because you essentially have a writing assistant on tap at all time, and even if they're not outputting usable content, they might give you an idea that will spark that creative juice inside your brain, and send you on a path that you wouldn't have otherwise, and produce work that otherwise wouldn't have happened if everything had to come completely from the human brain. And I guess it all technically all comes from the human brain because they're trained off that stuff, but this is just making that more efficient. I think the valid concerns, and this is where these regulations have to get quite nuanced, because I could see a regulation happening now that seems sensible that actually kneecaps people in the future, and is going to have to be very, very careful with how it's implemented. But I could see I could see like an executive, because let's look at executives and producers and stuff. They really don't know how their own industry works, in the sense that they are an industry that is theoretically fueled off human creativity and storytelling, and the shared myths and legends and blah 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 blah, that sort of stuff. We like stories as people, and they are the industry of stories. So they're thinking like, oh, this thing can write stories, right? Big booby, titty explosion robot, with progressive but also not too progressive message, and then it just they think that they can just type in an input and then they're going to get like an output that's filmable, when really I'm not going to deny that maybe one day that'll be possible. I think the systems as they are right now are quite too primitive for that. They're amazing systems. I do use Chat GPT and stuff for various things, but I never default to it as my only source. I'm always using it to inspire me to look in other places, to think in a slightly different way, to help me go outside the box. I think that is what its current utility should be, and I think I think there should be more of a nuanced discussion about that. It actually gave me a film idea that I wouldn't have thought of otherwise, and now I've been brainstorming ways to. I've been brainstorming the structure for that in my spare time, which has been a fun process. But I wouldn't have gotten that if I hadn't fed a lot of information into it, and then it thought about different ways and different configurations, certain elements that I was thinking about could take. And although I didn't take anything from whole cloth, it did allow me to go back and forth. And the cool thing is, when it gives you something, you can actually type in another input as if it's a person, and then it can be like, oh yeah, this could do, and it can actually be quite an organic process to use it as a writing tool. Again, it just needs to be used in its place. You need to understand its limitations. You need to understand that at the moment, as it currently exists, it cannot really replace writers and stuff like that, because it isn't that sort of tool. It is very much it's Photoshop for writers. It'll help you, but it'll generate it. The way I see all of this generative AI stuff, and this includes image. I don't know what happened there.
What the fuck?
A cord snagged somewhere.
Okay.
I fixed it.
I thought you were swallowed
this-
by
someone-
a
someone's-
demon.
Yeah, someone was trying to kill me for doing pro AI propaganda. Yeah. So the way I see it is, it's kind of like it's just finding it's. I like to see it as basically you're giving people another method. So you have like the sculptor who has a block of marble. I think I like to think of it like you're giving people more ways to produce your blocks of marble, so that you can then mold that into a shape that is pleasing. And that's ideally how it should be. It's just speeding up these. It's giving you a lot of raw material to work with that could be very, very useful. And I think that's the best place for it right now. It is a generator of raw material, and it is a thing that can speed up processes and allow for all kinds of possible. I see it kind of the same way I see CGI. It's a tool to be used. The conversations is just about how it should be used, and
That was actually an example I used earlier. It was comparing it to CGI. the issue that comes with
Yeah.
it is that because CGI has been used as a crutch, people have become like annoyed with using CGI when like that shouldn't be it. You shouldn't just prefer something just because it was done practically. You know, it's
Yes.
just that you need to use CGI well and not replace everything with CGI or fix everything in post. You should actually have an idea of what you want to use the CGI for, you know, when you're shooting the film and everything.
Exactly it. Like even Nolan uses CGI. It's just that he has very specific rules
Yeah.
about how he uses it. Like I think he says that he during VFX sequences he always starts and ends with a practical shot to ground the audience, stuff like that.
Mm-hmm.
And always has his lighting references and all that. Like there's actually more CGI in Interstellar than you would probably think for Nolan. But getting back onto the subject of these things as tools, I think the analogy. I think in like my first stream repository, I used the analogy that we have the hammer, and the hammer is a tool. We use it to nail things into place. We use it to put boards on walls and all that sort of thing. It's a very useful tool, the hammer, the electric drill, the X, Y, and Z. Those things can also be used as murder weapons, and you can like beat people's brains out and like do all kinds of horrible things to people with them. And it's important to realize that because even though they can be used in that way, that doesn't mean that we should ban the tool or demonize the tool. It just means that we need to regulate people using it in that way. So in this case, murder is illegal, torture is illegal, that sort of thing. Um, the difficulty with CGI and AI is that it's a bit more nuanced than murder and torture. So we do have. So I think I think it's going to be a little bit more of a. It's going to be. I think that it's going to be an ongoing conversation, and I think my view is always going to be I want to just encourage people to be nuanced in their thinking and to remember the benefits of these tools and like I think I also just speak from a very personal place with it because I just find them to be really good accessibility tools because I get fatigued quite easily. I don't always have the mental faculties to put in 110%, and so sometimes the emergence of these tools is actually quite good for me because it has saved me time and it has allowed me to expand what I can do as an artist and just as someone who likes to get things done. And I'm always very worried when something even sounds remotely technophobic because technology, I do believe, can be this very incredible force for good when it's properly regulated and when we are using it responsibly. And I think when we go technology bad, it does have. I don't like where that leads. I'm always very much like and I've seen and you see this throughout history, like the invention of the film camera and the invention of photography took decades, if not nearly a century, to become legitimized as an art form because people were having the exact same worries about it that we're currently having now about AI, CGI is having to go through that. There was a time on like Flickr or DeviantArt where they wouldn't let you post work if it looked like it was done in Photoshop or if it was digital art. We had that exact same. It happens every single time a new piece of tech launches, and it's really radical and revolutionary. There's always a backlash, and I think we have to be aware of that. And again, we just need to be very careful about the language we use, about how we talk about it, and that we're not ascribing um, um, inherent badness to the thing, and instead we're talking about okay, the technology's here, it can do a lot of good. What are the ways we can regulate it so that it's not so that people aren't using it to do harm? And it's not going to be an easy conversation. There's not going to be easy answers,
Yeah.
but it's important to remember that we do harm by restricting it too much as well. So that's kind of my position.
Yeah. From my perspective, something that I think I can actually mention in terms of like my experience with it. Me and Zach, we used to use Midjourney a lot
Mm-hmm.
to generate like prompts. Like we're writing something, we're kind of like trying to visualize it. A lot of the times Midjourney helped a lot, just a visualization of what you're, you're writing, what you're trying to convey. And not only just that,
Yeah.
but helping in terms of production sense of being like, okay, this is what I want. Okay, this is a good idea of how I want to represent this, or maybe, it's not a good idea for that, but it's a good idea for something else that we're writing. Like, ooh, this gives me a cool idea. And it's the same for ChatGPT and, every other writer assistant AI tool, which is something I mentioned to you, Meme. I don't know if you watched that Drew Gooden video I linked. But it's the point that he makes, that he's using it, that, this AI should be used as a tool to help you come up with ideas. Maybe you're writing a prompt and it gives you something back. It might be stupid, it might be smart or whatever, but it gives you an idea of what to write, but you don't use it to replace the writer. In the same sense of like, maybe you start writing a prompt, but then, your brain already is like, oh, actually, I know something to do with that idea, and then you don't even need, like, the AI to give you something back. Like, that's
Yeah.
just enough to help you with creativity. And I agree, AI can be very helpful, and probably will be very helpful in terms of creativity for a lot of writers. To
Yeah,
get
exactly.
inspiration and spark, get that spark, as you said. I just think, like Drew Gooden says in his videos, that companies are gonna see these tools and like think, oh, we can just replace our writers with this, because this is a tool. We don't need to pay them. We don't need to give rights to this AI. Any workers' rights or anything. They're not gonna strike against this, the AI. So we're just gonna pay. So we're just gonna use these tools and replace our writers, and it's gonna be just fine. When like that's not. You might get to a point eventually where it is comparable to a human writing,
Yeah.
but I don't think it's ever going to replace it in a way that's actually like, fully replacing humans, because art is
Yeah.
an expression of your, yourself, your feelings, or everything you want to convey through that. It's
Yeah.
an expression of you, and you can't really do that with an AI when it's, not a person, not doesn't have a personality or anything.
Yeah, I think, I don't even think it'll necessarily be dystopian when it is getting to the point where it is starting to become comparable, because it's like you said, it still needs to be directed by a human. And when it gets to that point, it might be a case that it can make up for the flaws a writer has. So some writers are not very good at writing dialogue, and if but they're really good at writing stories.
Mm-hmm.
So if they can work on the story structure and the plot holes and everything, but the AI helps them with the dialogue, that might not be a bad thing.
Yeah, refine something.
I yeah, exactly. There's this is an interesting video actually on the subject, because Mr. Austin McConnell here, he used a fair few AI tools in a video that he made, and people accused him of basically going into Midjourney or Stable Diffusion, typing in a few prompts, and then going into an audio generator, typing in a few prompts. And they basically accused him of doing 10 minutes of work on a video because they could see that AI tools were used, and they were accusing him of like denying workers work and stuff. And this video basically systematically it shows exactly how AI tools can be used for good, because I think he did it all in the right way. He did try to find a lot of human workers. He couldn't find any within his price range, because this is actually a very good point. I think corporations do using these tools to bypass human workers, like that's a much ickier thing inherently. But when we start going after independent creators who literally cannot afford to hire people, they literally cannot afford to hire artists to do every single frame, or they can't hire voice actors to do every single thing, at least if they don't want it to be good. Like, why? And then people jump to the comment section. It's like, if you're not gonna do it right, you shouldn't have done it at all. And it's like, wait, so you're saying the choice is for an independent creator is to either just to bankrupt themselves by hiring a bunch of people that they cannot afford, or to just do nothing and just never get off the ground or anything, and never eventually get into a position where they can hire people.
Yeah,
I think that's where it gets.
I would get back to the idea of like, we shouldn't blame the people using these tools, like the specific independent creator people who are using these tools. should blame the system
Yeah.
for the way that people don't have a living wage. So they kind of need to charge for their work more than someone else is able to pay it, because people just because of the way that the way your work is valued, and the way that people were actually paid for their work is not fair compared to the amount of work that they put in. So especially in the creators like that, like on YouTube and stuff, there's like a huge element of luck. It's not it's not like, oh, you work for 100 hours and you're gonna get paid like $10,000. Like, no, you can work on 100 hours of a video and get paid literally nothing if your channel is not even monetized yet. And I've worked on a lot of videos for a lot of hours, and I think the amount of money from my personal channel that I've made is like $4 so far. So it is something that's like, it's hard to blame people. There are independent creators that can't just afford to pay for everyone to do it. I mean, I'm lucky that Neb makes my thumbnails for free. A lot of people need to pay for thumbnail artists, and thumbnail artists deserve to be paid fairly, for the work they're doing. The issue would just be like,
Yeah.
can people afford it? A lot of people can't. So yeah.
Yeah, exactly. It especially like, 'cause I think what he was putting together, he put together like a 51-minute motion comic basically.
Mhm.
And he actually did commission designs and stuff. He did actually work with a bunch of human artists, but he didn't have enough money to make it all like everything was meticulously handcrafted and everything with the best voice actors and everything. He had to use tools that would allow him to go the rest of the way. So he trained the diffusion models on the commissioned work, and so he was able, and he still had to do a lot of hand editing of a lot of the different frames. With the AI generated voices, you can't just type in order to get something good from AI generated voices from like the 11 AI guys, you have to generate multiple, because the way it works is that you type in a prompt, and it will say it a different way each time. And sometimes you got to micromanage the fuck out of it, because sometimes it'll mostly deliver it correctly, and then it'll flub like a little bit, and so you have to get it to keep saying the same line over and over again until you get something good. You have to fiddle with settings and all that, and it is its own process. It is. And I think another thing we have to keep in mind is that the arguments about losing jobs, about how it can override people, we have to be very careful with that, because the same argument that is used there can be used. It doesn't just stop at AI. Like, you could argue we shouldn't be filming on digital because it takes jobs away from the people who develop the film, who work specifically with physical film. You can argue that we shouldn't be using digital non-linear editors, because it takes away jobs from people who work with physical film editing. You can argue that we shouldn't use CGI because it takes jobs away from the people who do practical. It keeps going down the chain when it's the argument of jobs lost. And I'm not sure you can make an argument about that isn't going to then kneecap a bunch of stuff we already rely on. And there's a bunch of AI tools that people don't even really think about. Like, a lot of people, most people who do podcasts use a tool called Descript, which I think that's what it's called. I need to look into it because I think it would be very useful for me. But it automatically cuts out noise. It cuts out ums and ahs. It actually allows you to, if you misspoke, you can actually just retype in what you were meant to say, and it can produce an approximation, and you can see if that's usable or not. Like, people have been using this stuff for, people have been using this stuff for years. And even when you hire an editor, what are they going to use? They're going to use AI tools, because they would be stupid to not use AI tools, because AI tools, they cut their workload in half. And so when we just put this blanket, I think this is another problem with putting the blanket statement on AI, is that AI tools have been around for years at this point. It's just that they've only become really public the last couple of years.
Yeah, there's a lot of tools that I'm sure you and I have used for years in editing that are AI in a sense, but we just like didn't identify it as AI because it was like a different type of what we consider AI to be now,
Yeah, like Adobe Premiere becomes unusable without AI at this point. Like, they've built machine learning into all of their programs at this point, and to make them more convenient. Like I use scene edit detection has been a godsend for me. So that's, I think that's another reason I'm. I think that Austin McConnell video really highlighted it for me. Is that I think the reason my gut really didn't like a lot of the anti-AI arguments is because I kind of rely on it, and the very people we're protecting a lot of the time rely on these tools. And when you're demonizing the technology, we're demonizing the very things that could be lightening their workloads a lot of the time. And I think it's very important to recognize that as something that's happening.
Yep. Let's see what else I'll talk about AI, because it was mostly meme and I. Jab, what do you think of AI?
Hello. I'm on the side of Ming. I'm someone in the field of technology. I work in it, but in a security aspect, so a bit of a different lens. But I think technology is the greatest tool humanity has kind of ever made, since the basic survival stuff. And I think we still haven't yet taken advantage of it in the ways that we should, because we still can't truly understand the capabilities of technology. And I think if we could understand technology a lot better, we'd be a lot better off as a society. And I think it could do wonders in any industry. AI, for example, in the media industry, I referenced how it can be used instead of crunching our employees. We could use AI to help fill in those gaps that would require that manpower and that abuse of worker rights. Or as Meme said, AI can be used as a jumping off point for ideas when you're in a creative lull, which is going to happen to a lot of writers, a lot of producers, even anyone in the industry. So I think AI is a very useful tool. The problem is it's so easily abusable because of technology. AI is used everywhere, so it's easily affordable for companies. So it's about how can we prevent it being used for the sole purpose and lens of how much profit can we get by using it, because then we started to unethical practices, maybe even laying off employees or reducing their rights because, hey, if you don't do it, we'll just get AI involved and you'll learn even less. So definitely need better AI awareness, definitely need some ethical boundaries, and this is where I think we could potentially have a job role where you have your AI experts, people that understand the AI, where it can be used, the potential consequences of it being used, whether it be security, welfare, and such, and those be hired within companies and even within the state if it comes to legal proceedings as well, because that could eventually happen. And the fact that we're so behind in the case of technology in a legal sense is quite astounding as well. So I think we need to venture into there as well. Really think about how we can integrate that to make any headway, essentially.
Yeah, going to be a lot of teething issues, a lot of difficult conversations, and just a lot of need to be being very empathetic towards the people who are scared of it, as well as trying to another big issue is that the Venn diagram between tech people and art people is like a pixel wide, so we do need to build a lot of bridges so that people actually understand how this technology is used and how it can be a force for good. And they also need to understand that it should not be used as an excuse to abuse workers and to force these unreasonable deadlines on people. Because even with these tools, that's not a guarantee that you're going to get stuff done by a specific deadline. It just means that there is more. You have more tools to use to get a result, rather than it being a guarantee of a specific result in a specific time.
Yeah, and on that topic, Because a lot of the, 'cause we're talking about the writers' demands in terms of actors, their demands are quite similar. Wage increase,
Mhm.
fair pay for residuals, but they also have a big thing with AI and the way that it's being used with them, which is very different from the way it's being used with writers, and that's one of the big asks um from actors is mostly like so that they can retain their image rights. Like one example is how we mentioned it earlier, but the One Division background actors who got their faces scanned without their
Yeah.
knowledge, and it's going to be used, they don't know when, and they're not being paid for it. It's just done something
Yeah,
that's
that's really
done against,
scummy.
yeah, it's just done against their knowledge. They didn't consent to it, and I think the basic thing should definitely just be consent. You want to use
Yeah.
their image and sell it to be used as AI, whatever you can. It's your image. You know what to do with it. It's yours. But the issue is companies using that and just exploiting that and being like, oh, you guys like Tarkin, the actor who's dead. Let's just get his face and use it again. It feels really off. And Christopher Reeve, we mentioned as well, in The Flash and everything like that. It's just like, especially actors that are already dead, it's just like, you should not do that. It's just completely disrespectful when you're not getting their consent, because you can't, they're dead. You're just using it for your own profit without actually, like, utilizing it in a way that would benefit both parties.
Mhm.
And it's a big issue with that. So I completely understand why actors are very mad at that.
Oh man, it's yeah, it's definitely from what I heard, I guess this is where I really take the issue with it is didn't they say that what they were trying to do is they were trying to that the studios were trying to get them in for like they were offering to pay them for a day's work to come in, do a bunch of like scans and stuff to get their image like all recorded and stuff so they could digitally recreate it, and there was no offer for residuals or anything like that. Like they just
Yeah.
basically were just trying to, yeah, that feels that approach to it feels wrong.
Yeah.
I think I think I won't probably get into it right now because it's just such a sticky issue. But I do think I do have very complex views on the whole digitally recreating actors thing. But that approach where you are not offering them anything beyond a day's pay, to basically have their image forever available to you as a company to use in whatever way you see fit without having to consult them or their estate. That's yeah, no, no. You need to offer a little bit more. You need residuals. You
Yeah.
need if they're still alive. You need to it's complicated. It's supremely complicated. I'm not going to outline like a whole way it should be done now. I think there's probably a right and a wrong way to do it, but um, I do think that just offering them a day's pay for what could be this very fundamental existential thing for them is not on.
Yeah, no, I agree. It's just the kind of thing where, like, because the thing is, I'm not I'm not a fan of recreating actors at all. But, like, it's gonna happen, but at least do it with the consent of the actors, right? Like, I'm pretty sure Mark Hamill did negotiate with Disney to let them use his rights and everything to recreate his character. And, if he did that, good for him. If he's being paid for it, if he's happy with it, that's okay. If the issue is, like, what we mentioned with WandaVision, like, you're just doing that without asking their permission. That's what's scummy. And, like, if you're just gonna be allowed to use someone's face forever and ever and ever, you should at least get, paid residuals for their image and not just be used to make whatever content you want and you only profit from it, whereas they get nothing from it. It's just very simple, like being paid for the value that derives from your work, even if your work was, being scanned, your face being scanned, that face has value and you should be paid for the value that that face is worth.
Yeah, and if the actor's no longer there, I think the estate should at the very least be involved in that
Yeah.
process. They the people who are authorized to make those sorts of decisions in the absence of the actor, but it shouldn't just be down to it shouldn't be completely down to the studio. It needs to be, there needs to be someone, just making sure that it's being used in the correct way,
Yeah.
in like a respectful way,
Well, it's
rather
something
than just.
that's interesting is that they're using a third party to negotiate with the companies and everything to make sure there's an
Mhm.
impartial third party. I feel like there should be a lot of regulations like an impartial third party to be like, okay, this is actually tasteful, this is okay, the way that it's being used, whatever, and so like, oh no, this isn't, you need to pay more for the estate, for the act, or something like that. Where it's just
Yeah.
like, if it's just the company and the person, it feels a bit hard, especially they can just use the people's
Yeah,
image rights,
exactly.
apparently.
Yeah, and God forbid that might actually pressure them to, like, if they're thinking like, God, I could get in really deep doo-doo if I use this actor's likeness and
Mhm.
we put something out that's really shit. Like that might put the fire under their ass to actually. Well, this might actually help the writers' situation where they're actually allowed to produce like a fucking decent work of film in order to make sure that they don't get in deep doo-doo for using an actor's likeness. And also, I think if there's anything I am. Actually, no, I'm not going to say that because I just realized that I saw some very funny AI parodies and I wouldn't want them restricted. I'm just going to go back on that. I think it is. I think when it is a big studio and like, because Grand Moff Tarkin, like, I would say that's honestly like one of the better ways to do it because I don't think he was out of character in Rogue One. Like Rogue One has a lot of problems and stuff. Like maybe there's arguments for why he is out of character. I haven't seen them myself, but I
Oh.
remember he was basically fine in that.
Yeah, my issue is
He-
mostly
yeah, and
just
he-
the actor being dead is what feels off to me. Like, you can just, like what Dr. Sleep did, like, you get other actors that look like the actors from the
And
original
like the
thing.
thing is,
yeah,
guy they
yeah.
had
So
on
I can
set,
totally get that.
the guy they had on set for Tarkin, who's like a pretty big actor over here, he looks a hell of a lot like Peter Cushing to the point where you could have just used him and like it would have been believable enough that you can buy
And it
that. Yeah,
wouldn't have
it's
looked so uncanny valley as it does in Rogue One. Because that looks
Yeah,
really
it was.
off-putting.
Yeah, it was it was so close yet so far. And then you had plasticine layer at the end.
Yeah.
But yeah, it is that murky. There's a lot of murkiness in it for me because I do really understand where people are coming from with the discomfort. I really hate what they did in The Flash because it didn't even come off like they were trying. It just came off as, look, you recognize this?
Mm.
Yeah, I do. Please stop. Yeah, like because Chris Reeves and Chris Reeves Superman didn't show up as a character. He showed up as a puppet. He
Yeah.
showed up as, look at me. He didn't have a reaction to the world, to his world. There wasn't any. None of the cameos really had any place in the story. They were just kind of there and didn't really do anything. Crisis on Infinite Earths did it better, unfortunately.
Yeah, it's hilarious to say that. I make that point in my video, I think.
Yeah, so it's I have a lot of empathy for people who for the position of just not wanting it in general.
Yeah.
And yeah, I think I really want to acknowledge that. Yeah.
Yeah, I was gonna say something and I forgot. Oh well. But yeah, I think basically the conclusion here, like after looking at their demands and talking about it for a long time, is that they're not really asking for anything that's too unreasonable. Actually, everything they're asking for seems really reasonable. Like, it's not really like they're asking, oh, don't use AI ever, or like, oh, we want to be paid way too much, and like, oh, we're already paid a lot, but we want more money. It's like, most of these people aren't paid enough to even make a living. It's just that we know the people who are famous are paid a lot because they're famous, therefore they get paid a lot. It's but
Yeah, they can demand that sort of thing.
yeah, exactly. But it's not for everyone, and these people deserve to be paid fairly for the work that they're providing. And if the company's profiting off of their work, they shouldn't get a slice of that profit, or maybe most of that profit. But means of production question is something.
Yeah, I had to do a very, very kind bitch slap to my uncle the other day, in relation to this subject because I think he was like, "Oh, big action stars, they get paid these multi-million-dollar deals, la 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 la," and all I could, and I had to basically very calmly, very politely point out that the people who get paid those big, like, let's look at the statistic. Would we say it's like 1% to 0.5% of working actors get paid those sorts of salaries, while the rest probably aren't even breaking even with a lot of the roles that they're getting.
Yeah, it's around there. I would say it's probably a fair description of it, because the thing is, most films that are made aren't seen by people. Most films that are made aren't big budget action films. Those are just the films that everyone sees because they're big budget, because they have the marketing budget for it.
Yeah.
It's why it's good that A24 exists as well, that you can actually do like indie films that are actually marketed pretty well and can make quite a bit of money. Blumhouse as well, which regardless of the quality of most of their films, they are funding lower budget things and letting, lower paid writers, actors, and directors actually get their works out there. And that's what's really good about those companies. Not to say that they're perfect either, but my point being that, if it weren't for them, these indie films would be super hard to find. And, we stuck with these big blockbusters, which are the ones that we see the most, but aren't representative of the actual industry at large.
Yeah, exactly. I think you touched upon something really good, which is there are a lot of films that people don't see, and I actually just did a quick Google. So to someone doing like a slapdown video of this stream later on, this is just a quick Google. This doesn't necessarily mean it's 100% accurate. Relax. Preempting. The statistics I've been able to find, literally glancing at the first Google search I found, was it seems to be between 700 and 2,500 films are released each year globally. And only like 200 or 300 of those max are from Hollywood. And only, I imagine, even a smaller amount of those are like the really big Hollywood blockbusters, because obviously Hollywood isn't just Hollywood blockbusters. They do all sorts of things. But people, this is the thing, there are so many films you guys are never going to see. There are so many films, and the actors on those films are going to be very they're not going to be seen by a lot of people. They're not going to get a lot of residuals, if they get any at all. Actually, in drama school, they made a very big deal about the fact that we need to be making sure there's residuals in our contracts, because otherwise we are getting fucked. This is why, and you got to think about how many actors are in a film. Like, you need a bare minimum of one, depending on the size of the production, and even that one actor might not be getting paid a hell of a lot of money for the amount of work that he's putting in. You got to memorize lines, you got to work on character, you got to have all the training and experience that allows you to play that character. There's a lot of being an actor is just being a functional human being, and that's very difficult when you're trying to put it's kind of that interesting catch-22, where it's very difficult to be a functional human being in Hollywood, but Hollywood is where all the money is, and you know what I mean. You kind of want to be. This is why I think it's good to hit the indie scene way before you break big. I think it's possible to get successful too early, because then you don't get the life experience that is going to make you an amazing artist later on. But yeah, it's I think I do think that I do think it's really worth keeping in mind that unless you are a really big name, and even then, most famous people, there's a lot of famous people who don't get paid that well. It's actually a minority of famous people who are going to get paid really well, because a lot of TV actors don't get paid that much. Like, they probably get paid decently well, but they're not going to be getting millions and millions of dollars.
Yeah, it's like we
Chris
mentioned
Hemsworth,
earlier about the Friends actors getting paid like 10 million per year with residuals and everything. That's the exception, because that's Friends.
Yes.
Sort of the most popular shows, arguably the most popular show ever made. So yeah.
Yeah, if you get a really popular show, like Simpsons is another example. Like, the actors can keep renegotiating their contracts for that, because they want to keep that show on the air. And that's not so good as far as like quality of content staying up, but in terms of like earning a living, you want to get a Simpsons, because you are going to be set for the rest of your life. Or get like a really niche but really a really niche sci-fi show with a really dedicated fan base, because you will get paid in cons for the rest of your life.
It's a show.
But it is worth noting. I had a point about TV actors and stuff like Chris Hemsworth. He actually only got paid $300,000 for Avengers.
Wow.
Like only $300,000.
Yeah, but
relative to, like, that was actually, while Robert Downey I think got paid 40 million because he was able to negotiate that contract a bit more. So it's not everyone is getting paid millions and millions of dollars. And Chris Hemsworth, it's probably he hadn't gotten to the point where he could negotiate for that sum. And it's very rare that people get into that position to even negotiate for what he was able to get on that film.
Yeah, that's even
and,
like a lot of money that he made. It's just compared to what we expect, it's like way less.
Yeah, it's very disproportionate. It's all like contracts and stuff, and that's why these strikes are happening in the first place. Because I think I don't think anyone wants to not be able to negotiate for higher sums, but at the same time, there needs to be a baseline of acceptable minimums,
Yeah.
and that's just not being met at the moment.
Yeah, I think it's just a case of like, well, I mean, that's a good example you used from Chris Hemsworth, because in terms of screen time, probably has like similar amount to every other Avenger. But you have Robert Downey Jr. getting like 100 times more, or whatever the math would be for that. It's like I get that star power carries a lot of weight, but you should have like a minimum like set of like, oh, you're gonna be the main actor, or share the screen at this amount of time, and you get like a minimum, like, okay, you're gonna be paid for this amount because it's what the industry standard is for this amount of screen time that you have.
Or you're gonna be working X number of hours.
Yeah, exactly. So it's like, it's proportional to the amount of work you put in. It's just what it should be, instead of proportional to the, just how much you can actually hold the company ransom for the amount of money they can give you, which is just what star power is, basically.
I'm just remembering like Mark Hamill earned the amount he earned for Force Awakens was like the most disproportionate any actor had ever earned for the amount of screen time and work they put in, because he literally just stands there and turns around.
Yeah, he's like in what, 20 seconds of the film, maybe less.
Oh, his 20 seconds might be pushing it, honestly.
Yeah.
I don't actually know.
Yeah, so point
I bring
being,
that up because he really loves to joke about it.
yeah. And I mean, if Disney was willing to pay him for that, go for it. I mean, if you're gonna take money away from Disney and get yourself paid, you should do it. It's not a thing of like he's doing anything wrong. It's just, other actors should also just be paid well. It's kind of the thing.
Exactly.
Yeah.
He was actually shitty he didn't do more work, because he was like, have you seen the clip of him recreating his experience of reading the
Oh
Force
yeah,
Awakens
you talking about not having any lines is hilarious. He gets the script and it's like, wait, I gotta say anything? What do you mean?
Where am I?
He
Wow,
reads the
what's going
script
on?
and he's like, wait, where am I? Why am I not in this film? When
And
did
then
I
the
come in?
lightsaber comes out of the snow.
Yeah, it's like, oh, that's when I come in, right? No? Okay.
Wow, what an entrance! Wow, wait, Ray catches it! What?
Yeah, I love that clip of him being like, Ray? It's brilliant. But yeah, I think that's it. I don't know if we have too much else to talk about. I think we've covered everything I wanted to talk about. Pay your workers well. That's the bottom line here. 10 jabs Zod, if you guys have anything you want to say.
Fuck Disney.
I mean, yeah, that is
Yeah, fuck
also
Disney.
the bottom line here, that Disney is the worst one of these companies. Not to be fair, there are a lot of other very shitty companies in this, and some, especially Warner.
Yeah, it's a race for the bottom.
Yeah. Oh yeah, that's actually a thing that we didn't bring up, but it's actually really important as part of, because I brought up Warner and I remembered, the TV shows getting taken away from HBO Max, and how that's actually a huge issue, for a lot of, workers who rely on residuals, because if you're taking the show away and you can't watch it anywhere, you can't be paid for residuals. And that's actually something a lot of the writers and actors have been complaining about. Like, they make a show and then it can just like randomly be taken off the air and they just get paid nothing for it anymore, even though they have worked on it, and you can't even watch it. It's like insane. It's the kind of thing like, maybe that shouldn't be the case. Maybe you shouldn't be allowed to just not have this TV show or movie available anywhere to watch anymore, considering how many people worked on it and how, people were relying on that to for their living.
Yeah, like it was mostly animated shows, really. Like it was
Yeah.
mostly just a lot of just animated shows, and it got like a massive purge and everything. And now you have basically no choice but to pirate it. If it wasn't for piracy, they'd be lost media.
Yeah. Yeah, that's even just
this is a
like,
big issue.
yeah, just like losing it to time, not even, thinking about pay. Like, you don't let people support the people who made the thing you like anymore. If you take a TV show like that away, you can't buy it. You can't buy it physically. You can't pay to watch it anywhere. It's just gone. Like, I just don't think companies should be allowed to do that. I think it's kind of insane that they are.
I think so. I read a very distressing statistic that video games released before 2010 are starting to have an inaccessibility rating potentially comparable to silent film, and that's very, very distressing to hear. Like, to play old video games now, you are reliant on piracy. You are reliant on finding ROMs and emulation, and I guess in PC games, just straight up pirating
Or
the game and then having to
emulating or potentially owning physical media or finding it somewhere to buy, which is often really hard. That's something that and I think Jeb is gonna have a lot to say about it, but like the idea that everything is being replaced, especially video games, with digital media is a big issue. Like, even if you buy a game that has a disc and you just install it, the game isn't actually like, you download it from the disc, right? You don't even own the game a lot of the times, even if you buy it physically. Nowadays, buying physically is just like a collection thing and not really like owning a game. And like, if your account is closed or something, you can just lose the games. Like what Ubisoft is doing with with the old accounts that people haven't used in, I don't know, a year. I think is what they. I don't know exactly how much time, but yeah.
Yeah, it's a very big issue. Like, I am one of the strongest advocates you'll find for archiving. Like, I don't even get rid of old emails. I think it is so important to have that trail and that connection back to history, both in art and in terms of historical documentation, because when we lose that, we lose pieces of how we got to where we are. We don't get to explore that anymore. We lose the lessons, we lose the substance of our history. And I think it's very, very problematic. Like, I think there is nothing that isn't worth archiving, I don't think. And especially especially works of art, I think, are insanely important, and everything that comes with that. Like, I think we should even be releasing source codes of very old games after a certain point, because again, there's a lot of value that comes from that.
But another part of that, and I just remembered that as well, is that Disney, pretty sure they're not gonna release any of their films as physically anymore after Guardians 3.
They said in Australia mainly, like
Australia.
At least I think it was.
Yeah,
it was in Australia. They're not going to sell any more physical media. Like Guardians is the last physical thing you can buy from Disney in that region.
And it's like, it's just like, sorry, go on.
No, it's because after the fucking thing where like they've created a steelbook for WandaVision, but it's literally just a box.
Yeah.
Like it doesn't even have like, it just says stream on Disney Plus or anything.
Yeah, some fucking genius. It's like,
I really
the thing is that by doing that, they're getting away from being able from paying residuals, because as we said, with streaming you can just get away with not paying residuals nearly as much. And if you buy a Blu-ray or a DVD or anything, part of that money goes to as residuals for the people who worked on it. If you don't do physical media anymore, those residuals are just gone, basically. You just don't have to pay them anymore, because they're not going to be residuals from those from DVDs and Blu-rays, from physical media. So if they actually just like stop selling them, it's a good thing it's only Australia. I thought it was everywhere. But if they stop selling these things as physical media, they can just get away with not paying the workers as much, and with residuals. And it's the kind of thing where like they're just finding more ways, not only to they're finding a way of like not only not preserving art, but using that as a way to just not to save money from like paying the people that actually deserve that to be paid for that. and that's really scummy.
Yeah, it's very this is the kind of shit that really troubles my soul. It really does. Because yeah, I don't like that. I'm for, like, the irony here is that streaming used to be the thing that was getting people to turn away from piracy, because what the main reason people pirated stuff was out of convenience. It wasn't
Yeah.
necessarily like cost was a factor, but people are willing to pay for stuff if they are getting, their bang for their buck. And when streaming started with Netflix and stuff, people were like, wow, I can just get all these movies just for paying, like, I don't know, $5 a month, and I just get them right away. I don't have to wait for it to download. Like, this is more convenient than pirating it. Fuck yeah, I'm gonna pay $5 a month, sure.
Yeah.
And now it's so inconvenient to engage with streaming. It is so inconvenient, and people are just going back to piracy because, well, you have the files, you have everything.
Yeah, I
The
mean,
thing
it's
is,
part
with
of why,
streaming,
like, there are shows that I can watch and mostly do watch on streaming services, but I still have them saved on my hard drive because I'm like, if that ever, dies, if the show just ever gets taken away, especially Legion, which isn't a show that I imagine it's getting them much money for Disney, being on Star Plus and Disney Plus and everything. It's like, I actually have it. I can watch it if I want to. I don't have to rely on this company actually thinking that the product I like is worthwhile. I know it is worthwhile for me.
yeah, exactly. It does make me wish that I had more money and space for physical media. I really
Yeah, me
do.
too. I definitely do not pirate. I've never pirated in my life. No, sir.
Definitely not.
No. And I have these files saved from obviously ripping the Blu-ray files. I would never break the law. But the thing is, like, if I could, I would pay for all of these things. It is expensive, and we got to the same point where we were like 10 years ago, where it was expensive to buy things, and people just go back to pirating. Because it's more convenient and more safe because of that. And you actually don't lose the media. If you download it, it actually is saved and you can watch it if you want to. So
Yeah, it's physically saved digitally on
Yeah.
your hard drive. Yeah, it is interesting, and this is the other thing I think, the kind of, like, I guess, something else worth noting for the particularly for film buffs, is that you are not getting through streaming. I don't think, at least not yet. Maybe something's changed, but because there are compression rates with streaming, there's
yeah.
compression, there's bit rates and all that. You're not getting full quality video out of it. You're getting
Especially
something
if
pretty
it's from
close, but you're not
Netflix.
getting, like, you're not getting the crisp, you're not getting the crisp experience you would get from getting it directly from a local source.
Yeah.
And you don't even have the option. Do you even have the option to just download it physically and engage with it through, like, not download the file necessarily, but download, like, the data you would need to make it, like, not have to rely on the streaming
I'm pretty
method?
sure, at least with Netflix, if you download it, it's gonna be, even if you download it with high quality, it's not gonna be like the highest bit rate. I think it's just gonna be the regular bit rate that you have when you download stuff.
Oh, that's retarded.
It is,
Okay.
and it's actually something that's interesting now. I don't know. Do you have YouTube Premium, me?
I do, because I really like being able to watch YouTube videos while doing other things. I think that's literally why I pay for it, so I can just multitask with YouTube, because it doesn't let me do it otherwise.
Yeah. All right. Well, I don't know if you've noticed this. It's something I noticed, and they added like a couple weeks ago. It's actually something I quite like that they added, because YouTube compression is stupid. But you can actually now, with with YouTube Premium, if the video was uploaded with high bit rate, you actually can watch it on a 1080p enhanced bit rate version, where it actually plays with higher bit rate, so there's way less compression, which is something like, hey, I can actually
like
watch
that.
videos well. Yeah, I like that, because I want to watch the videos in their best quality. And a lot of the times with YouTube, watching 1080p does not really mean 1080p.
No,
their compression really.
you might get it for
destroys it.
1080p if you're doing 4K. That's about your best
Yeah, if you
shot
watch it
at
in
that
4K,
point.
then it actually looks 1080p. Yeah.
Yeah,
And most people don't upload videos in 4K. They upload videos in 1080p. It's the norm.
yeah.
So I like that they added that, because you can actually watch it with better bitrate. But most streaming
Yeah.
services don't have that. You can't just choose to have the highest bitrate. There's some streaming services that actually have good bitrate. Prime Video has always been pretty great for me in terms of, like, it does not compress stuff when I'm watching it. It looks
Yeah.
pretty good.
Yeah, I could see Justice League and all of its. They tried glory.
You can look at the amazing color grading. Perfect.
Yeah, I did actually see that in 4K off Amazon Prime, and that was like oh my, that's it's really quite. Everything is very clear. I'll give it that. I can see everything. I
Yeah.
can really see everything. I can really see.
I don't know if that
how
helps
much
the
they
film.
tried.
Yeah, I don't know if that helps the
Yeah.
film, but I can see everything.
You can very clearly see the pixelated lip on Henry Cavill's face.
Yeah.
That's actually
Ooh, I'm just gonna
something that
pull-
I think YouTube kind of fucked with me, is because the compression rate is so low. Whenever people make videos shitting on Justice League, I actually couldn't tell like the lip was that bad. Just like, okay, it doesn't track perfectly, but like it doesn't look awful until I saw it in like actual 4K and good, like, compression.
Yeah, that's the awkward part about pointing out VFX on YouTube, is that just sometimes it'll blur it
Yeah.
enough just so it looks okay. The thing about Justice League as well is that there were two completely separate VFX teams working on the lip, and half of them got it more or less okay. The other half got the meme stuff. So that's another reason that maybe that happened, because people might not have been choosing the best examples.
Fair.
I guess YouTube is doing what the filmmakers want. They always say if you squint hard enough, it looks good. So
Yeah.
YouTube does for squinting for you.
Pretend it's what you
Yeah,
wanted and see how you feel. And YouTube took that to heart when Cinema Win said that.
Yeah, Markiplier is making a film right now. That I don't know
Oh,
why
yeah.
this triggered that memory with me.
I don't
hope
know
it's
either, but I
good.
saw the teaser or whatever. It seems interesting.
Yeah. He's also doing tasteful nudes now, isn't he? Because he got enough likes on a video.
Yeah, but
or
I'm pretty sure he
something.
said the money he's making off that, he's donating it. I don't know exactly to where, but I'm pretty sure he is donating that money.
I think to his mum or something.
Yeah, it
maybe?
might be. Yeah, I just know that he's not keeping that money, so
Yeah, but I just remember tuning into that stream, and it was kind of funny because someone
Yeah.
said flick it on the lens, and then he started laughing for like 3 minutes straight. It was the best thing I'd ever seen in my life.
Good old Markiplier. I've never watched them like actively. I've probably watched a video of 2 of his over the years, but I like him. He seems like a nice dude.
Yeah, he comes off as I've never been an active viewer of his, but he always seems like a very likable person.
Yeah.
From what I see.
Yeah, he seems like a pretty chill dude. That was a tangent. Yeah, very related to what we're
tasteful
talking
nudes.
about, yes. But yeah, now I think we've talked about everything. I'm glad I remembered those 2 topics because they were very important.
Yes, and it led back to Markiplier's OnlyFans, which I think is very
I think it's a
important.
perfect way to cap off the stream to talking about Markiplier selling nudes.
Yes,
But yeah,
I think so too.
I think that's it. Jeb, do you want to say something? You've been quiet for a while, but you always have a lot to say in terms of, workers' rights and things. And money.
If companies are not going to put in the effort for archiving or accessible media, then piracy should be legal. Go fuck yourselves. Thank you.
Based.
Yeah, fair point. Yeah. So yeah, I think that's it, chat. I think we did it. We got through the strike stuff. We actually didn't get many people in chat, or any. I think people in chat disagreeing with our take that the strike is a good thing and that workers should be paid for their work properly. I was worried we would, considering our overlap with some other audiences that like to be like, writers shouldn't be paid better. They're bad writers. Imagine writing She-Hulk and wanting more money. Insane.
Yeah, yeah. I think I was mentioned. Didn't I mention to you that I've not softened my stance on She-Hulk as a show, but I am slightly more empathetic towards the writers not getting
Yeah.
the legal consultants in, because I don't even think they would have had time or the money to do that.
Yeah.
Even if they wanted to.
Yeah, I mean,
I
would
think they were just trying to
would Disney even
look at
like
the-
be willing to pay the legal consultants, or they just be like, nah, it's not worth it?
It's like
Yeah,
It's like,
that's the problem.
we were like we were like I think I like said like, oh, like they're making a lawyer show, but they didn't get any like lawyer consultants in. But now I'm starting to think, wait, maybe Disney just couldn't be fucked to get
Yeah,
anything.
maybe the writers wanted to, but the Disney was just like, yeah, it costs too much. Don't worry about it. You'll figure it out.
Yeah.
You have Google.
Yeah, exactly. Or maybe none of them, maybe it was like where because all of them were newbie writers or inexperienced writers, none of them felt the confidence to like ask for such a thing, or there was no mentor person.
That's part of something that I've talked about, I think, especially with my Ant-Man stuff, is how Disney gets these people that are inexperienced or, that aren't like the big names, because they can just control them. Like, I don't think they got Peyton Reed to direct the Ant-Man films because of his talent. I think they got him because they can just push him around. And I feel that for a lot of their works. It's like, this is someone who's he's like famous enough, like they made one famous film that people are excited to watch something from them in the MCU, but not enough so that they actually have any pull if they want something, like, and they have to fight for it to be in the film. And it's actually something that I quite appreciate about the Amazing Spider-Man films, is Mark Webb insisting on keeping things in the film, certain scenes, or insisting and like fighting for stuff. Like, he had the balls to do that, and he had, I think he had only made like 500 Days of Summer in terms of like a film that was actually famous before that. And it's good that he actually fought for a lot of the things, and they actually allowed him to realize his vision. Regardless of what people say, I don't know why people think like the web cut is the thing that exists. He has said that film is his web cut. Like, people are they just think, oh, the film is bad, but it would have been good if not for, the studio, even though it is exactly what he wanted to do with the film. So I appreciate that they let him do that, and it feels like it was a more a healthier balance of producers being like, hey, but what about if you do this, instead of being like, you have to do this, like the Felicia Hardy.
Felicia Hardy?
Yeah, the thing. Like, that thing, like, oh, they're trying to set up this thing. I was like, oh, clearly the studio wanted that. That was actually not the case. They had that character written into the film, and one of the writers was like, oh, wouldn't it be a fun Easter egg if we named her Felicia Hardy? We name her Felicia, so that she could be Felicia Hardy, she could not. It's just an Easter egg. And then the Sony execs were like, oh, we need to make it a spin-off, because Sony went insane.
Did you see that one of their ideas was Spider-Man versus the Amazing Spider-Man before they did the Marvel deal? They were like, oh, maybe we can take Tobey. They wanted to take Tobey Maguire and Andrew Garfield together way before No Way Home.
Yeah,
That's hilarious.
In the email that leaked that like was proposing all these ideas, there was like, that was their big idea after Chasm 2.
Let's make Gwen Carnage and also Spider-Gwen. Let's do the multiverse. They've been thinking about multiverse since Amazing Spider-Man 2.
Well, the multiverse is a cheat code for getting cameos and everything that you want. It's yeah.
Yes, like AI. It's an incredible tool that can be abused quite easily.
And it is something that quite annoys me, because you can do so many amazing stories with the multiverse. I mean, Everything Everywhere All at Once proved that. Like,
yeah.
Just don't abuse it. Just don't let, the execs be like, yeah, let's use the multiverse to tell this story about fucking Doctor Strange. We'll figure it out. We'll figure out why later. Just put multiverse in the title, okay? Thanks.
Yeah, like, I feel like there's multiverse. If you're gonna do cameos in a multiverse film, there should be a garnish on top of an already good dish, rather than being the entire thing people are showing up for. And if you're going to have them in any substantial capacity, why not just make them substantial in their capacity in the film? Like, why, like, Patrick Stewart didn't really add anything to Doctor Strange. Like, for example, he's very, yeah, he's there. It is disappointing, because, there is a lot of, it's the well, the whole reason Avengers works is because it's really interesting to get a bunch of disparate characters, put them in a room together, and see what the hell happens. But they're kind of forgotten that essence of what makes a shared universe work and appeal and all of that.
Yeah, they think it's just the iconography of seeing the people you already know together, and that's enough, instead of, the substance that is what actually matters.
Yeah, just stick him in the hover chair, play the X-Men theme, and I'm sure that'll be fine.
Doesn't he also say a line from the next
Yeah,
Man
he
show?
says,
Yeah.
Just because someone
just
loses
because
their
someone
way.
stumbles and loses their way doesn't mean they're lost forever, even though, like, in the original film, he was talking about himself, technically. So,
Yeah, well,
Yep.
the funny thing of him saying that is that it's entirely contradictory to the point of what the Illuminati do. But, you know, not like they thought of that. They were just like, let's just, whatever, who cares? We just want the
Yep.
cameo.
2 weeks. 2 weeks to write this film. They did.
And then we have to blame Michael Waldron. Like,
Yeah, like I don't know what stick to measure his writing ability by at this
well,
point.
the only other thing I've seen from him other than the MCU stuff is an episode of Rick and Morty, which wasn't amazing, but it was actually good. It's the toilet episode. So I don't know. He can do good under Dan Harmon.
Yeah, it's so like it is because if a writer show like it's easier to judge a writer when you have a bunch of work behind them that is clearly stuff that they wanted to make rather than stuff that they were just forced to make. This is where where this gets complicated and where the blame needs to start shifting a little bit higher up. Because I don't think it's fair to really be that judgmental when inexperienced writers are being put in such precarious positions and just being forced to produce crap.
Yeah, it's the kind of thing. It's very simple. The thing that companies do, you hire inexperienced people because they're cheaper. More experience means you can ask to get paid more, and because of that, your work, these people that don't have enough experience, don't do the work as well, and so it just gets really hard for them to keep producing good stuff. But it saves them money in the short term. But as it always happens with these companies, they don't think of the long term. So it's why writers end up striking, because long term you're not paying them fairly. They're gonna be a bit mad of not being treated fairly or paid fairly. And it's the same thing with most jobs. People just want to be paid fairly, compensated fairly for their work. Not that people should work for a living, but that's
Yeah, like every I think, and maybe one more thing to address is I think people do have this perception of like, oh, you're a writer, you're an actor, oh, you're living your dream job, oh, I wish I could do that, oh, have to work 9 to 5, blah, blah, blah. And they're acting as if like because they're working in just being an actor or a writer is an inherent position of privilege, and therefore they don't deserve anything more. And it's like you're not working a day in your life, and it's like, well, they still gotta fucking eat, don't they?
Yeah.
Still gotta pay rent.
Yeah, and it's the kind of thing where it's like, even regardless of that, like even if they like just saying, oh, you're being paid well and everything, like even if they aren't being paid poorly, if they're compensated well, it doesn't mean that the work isn't hard or that it's fulfilling. Like might not be living your dream. I mean, a lot of points that media makes, when it's a bit more meta, when it's talking about writers and actors like working in certain fields. Like House has an episode where he treats an actor from a soap opera and he mentions how he hates his job, how he just doesn't play anything with substance because it's a stupid soap opera that all he cares about is just getting through the next episode. Just it doesn't care about him actually doing work that matters and that he likes, and that actually takes a big toll on his mental health. And it's like, it's expected because even though you're working in a field that pays well, even though you are being paid well and you're working in a field that is the field that you want, it doesn't mean that you're doing exactly the work that you want to do. It's why a lot of people usually start out in positions that it's not exactly what they want, and then they get to that point after a certain point in their life.
Yeah, exactly. Who's seen the first episode of the new Futurama season? Like that was probably, I was surprised by how, because obviously that all those episodes were completed ahead of time. I was surprised by how accurate that episode was to everything that's happening, like literally right now. Like,
well, the thing is, these strikes have been brewing for a while now. And I think it's just the pandemic as well was like a big thing that made people just like to be like the last straw, because the pandemic exacerbated a lot of the issues they were already having problems with. It's just like pointing out how awful the situation was for a lot of them. So regardless of it being done beforehand, I can feel like these people were already preparing for a strike for ages. Especially because the
Yeah.
reason the writer's strike especially happened is because their contract was up and about to be renewed now. So they were like, that's when we strike. When we need to renegotiate our contracts, we're going to strike so that we can actually get the contracts that we want. So it just makes sense.
Oh yeah. Yeah, exactly it. And especially what caught me about that is that the episode firmly puts the blame for the bad writing in universe in the All My Circuits reboot on the executives who are just trying to, well, on the executives that are the main characters, because they're trying to pump out like literally an episode an hour. And then you just see the writers literally dying in the room off screen, and then Bender has to go in and just produce an episode every 30 minutes, and it just turns into like this garbled mess with the occasional Bender is great thrown in there. It was just really funny.
Yeah, I mean that does seem very topical. I need to
Yeah.
watch Futurama. It does seem good, and Jab does talk a lot very positively about it.
Yes, I think it's the show that actually has been the least fucked. Like, 'cause this is the second revival, and it's still, the last two episodes, they're about they're not the greatest episodes I've seen, but they still had some solid laughs in there, and everyone's still like, it still feels like Futurama, like it hasn't lost that essence of
Mhm.
it, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
And that's really rare nowadays, especially for a show that's lasted that long, and they've gone on so long that they're paying off stuff that was set up 20 years ago now, which made me feel very old and very. I'm actually no. I'm going to fix my self-talk because I'm embracing the idea that life starts at 30. Okay, let's go.
Life
Let's
starts
go.
at 30. Yeah.
Yeah, bitch, get out of the way.
It is interesting. Because Supernatural, for example, lasted for 15 years. I do get the idea of like something set up in the beginning being paid off only at the end. Supernatural has a lot of those payoffs in the final season. We're just like, damn, I've been waiting for this for like 6 years. Like I started watching the show, I think it was as season 10 was airing. So even then, I was watching it for 5 years already when they paid it all off. Like, yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, and with Futurama case, it was literally a case of the episode, the season was due to air 20 years after an episode had aired from season 4 that mentioned casually, oh yeah, this will happen in 20 years, and then they were realized, oh fuck, we should probably actually do that shit.
Yeah.
Then they got a story out of it, which was like, yeah, good on you for
That's cool.
at least, yeah.
I'm trying to think of some other show that does that, but I'm sure there is one that I'm just trying to remember.
Angry
probably
Video
just a
Game Nerd, actually, because he mentioned he was going to review. He casually mentioned the game. What was it, Raid 2020? And then he just jokingly said, "Yeah, I'm going to review that in the year 2020." And then Angry Video Game Nerd was still going in 2020. It was like, "Fuck, I got to actually review it."
The passage of time. What a concept.
And I waited with bated breath for that to happen, and I was happy when it did.
Yeah. Gotta love those payoffs, no matter how much you wait for them.
Yes. And then I ran out of payoffs to wait for, and I got very sad.
Hey, there's always stuff from your childhood that's gonna be brought back, and it's gonna have some payoff.
Unless it's good, then I'll be happy.
Yeah, I mean, the Alien TV show is out next year. That's gonna be cool.
I hope so. I hope so. Disney, do not fuck that man. I don't want him to have a bad reputation.
Yes, let Noah Hawley do whatever the fuck he wants, no matter how weird and off-putting it may be. That's what makes him great.
Yeah, I get the feeling that even something bad from Noah Hawley would still be more interesting than whatever sludge the MCU is producing.
Yeah, definitely. It's a good thing. Well, I hope that that him being under Disney now doesn't fuck him over.
That's the main worry, isn't it?
Yeah, it's because
that
I
feels
think
like
I
we're-
mentioned it to you how like FX is really good for these people working under it. They have a lot of creative freedom and everything. So it really worries me that if it goes under Disney, it's gonna be like this corporate product, especially because it is a big franchise. It's Alien, so you know.
Yeah, and I think they had Legion had the big benefit that they had another X-Men show going at the same time that was a little bit more normal.
Yeah.
So he just had the freedom to just go.
Yeah, they asked him,
with
"Hey, can you
effects.
make an X-Men show?" It was like, and they let him choose what he wanted to do. So he chose the weirdest one because that's who he is. So yeah.
What about this guy that no one likes?
Yeah, nobody
Sure,
liked this comic. It's a
sure.
great idea. Like, okay, you do whatever you want. And he did whatever he wanted, and it was amazing. Oh, Legion. So anyway, I think now we're done. I think now we covered everything. This stream actually went longer than I thought. I thought we wouldn't have enough to talk about for this long, but we did.
Well, you know that's what happens when I jump on.
That's true. That's fair. But yeah, I think that's it, chat.
This is really funny.
And we will. Oh, hold on. There's a funny from me. Mortal Kombat story is no good. I guess I'll watch that after the stream. I'm sorry, chat.
Yeah,
But,
it's only a minute long, but yeah.
Yes. Okay. So we'll catch y'all next time. I'm not sure exactly when the next ECUM is gonna be. Probably next Friday. If we have a topic to cover. If not, then oh well. And the next Flash ECUM will be out when I finish editing it. So that means I have no clue when it's out. Okay. Don't. Like everyone loves fucking
Finish when it's finished.
Yeah, because at the comments of every fucking Flash ECUM, I get people saying like, "Where's the next one? It's been so long since the last one." Like, dude,
ECUM.
yeah, you gotta chill. I I don't have time or mental energy to work on this that often. But it will be out when it's out. All right. So yeah, chat. See you next time. Memes channel's in the description as well. Go watch him. Go watch his streams. You're going on for a while there.
Yeah.
Wow. So anyway, Goldface.
Go.
Oh, okay.
No face.
Jeff is basically half